On the 23rd of December 2022, I posted a document to Twitter about my former best friend Blare Television. She had been involved in orchestrating a fake relationship with an insane person called Vary, who had been pretending to be in a relationship with me for nearly 6 months. Blare had purposefully done this to traumatize me, and while her plan was in place, she willfully allowed Vary's emotional and physical abuse of me to take place. Exactly 8 months later, she uploaded her response, a 6-hour expose titled Lying for Pie, My Abuser's Smear Campaign, which also responded to a flawed second document and bits and pieces of various things I've said. The video claims I repeatedly abused her and that I'm a stalker, none of which is true. Practically every claim in a video is false and every argument she makes is wrong. Blare has repeatedly emotionally abused me, been complicit in me being physically abused, has defended her abuse as justified, and has lied and manipulated over and over and over again to escape the consequences of her actions as well as to hurt me. I have full receipts. I have a plethora of evidence to show that every claim of abuse Blare makes against me is false, that everything from the original document and parts of the second document I made are true, and that Blare has learnt nothing and is refusing to take any responsibility. I know both me and Blare have done shitty things, but by the end of this video you'll understand very key important differences, such as how Blare keeps lying about and justifying her actions while I took responsibility for mine. I recommend you watch the first video in this sort of two-parter, which is linked in the description. But whether you have or haven't, I'll get into the context you will need to understand the breakdown of Blare's video. If you wish to skip to the debunking, skip to this timestamp on screen. Let's begin. In 2020, I joined the commentary community, where I became pretty well known for my videos and the dramas I was involved in. I met Blare TV in early 2021 through our shared love of Employment videos and the beginnings of her attempts to join the commentary community. We became very good friends, best friends even. We both genuinely cared for and loved each other. We were inseparable. Another person I had met through the commentary community was Lucy, who due to a mix of my immaturity and his hypersexuality, was the first person I ever sexually interacted with online. In late 2021, Lucy started to get more degenerate in how he expressed himself sexually to me, trying to get me to engage in worse and worse kinks, one of the worst of which was him sending me nudes of people without their permission. Lucy sending me nudes he had received from others began as just people who I did not know, those he had met on Omegle or Discord. However, it then progressed to some Twitter mutuals I didn't know well, then a friend of mine, and finally on the 20th of February 2022, my closest friend, Blare TV. I never asked for him to send any of this, however by not telling him to stop sending it and by accepting it, I fully acknowledge I'm to blame for this and I was 100% in the wrong for this. No excuses. What I did was horrible and terrible, and I've never said anything to the contrary. At the time, I only realised how immoral this was after I got Blare's, as she meant a lot to me and it made me realise how fucked up I was, which is why I told Lucy I was not comfortable with this anymore. 2 days later, I made a document exposing Lucy for even worse things I found out he did, such as being a pedophile and attempting to rape a 14-year-old. I also mentioned that Lucy had sent me other people's nudes, expressing regret. The commentary community was shocked. Lucy was persona non grata, but being the more well-known person, I also received the brunt of the backlash, justifiably being exiled from the community due to accepting nudes of my friends as well as generally mishandling the Lucy situation. I stayed on Discord for a couple of weeks talking to friends, but after a couple of weeks I left the internet in totality until May, where I rejoined the commentary community and met Varylist, a really cute gore artist. I quickly became very close friends with them. I played Minecraft and DM'd them for hours every day until I was forced off the internet by my family due to a very poorly made video filled with misinformation being leaked to my extended family by a doxer. The video portrayed me as some sort of racist, and also most slanderously implies that my motives while exposing Lucy was suspect, basically saying my intent was not to expose Lucy, which he implies with literally nothing to back it up. Nearly as soon as I was forced off the internet, I confessed my feelings of love to Vary via Google Doc, which she reciprocated by saying they felt the same way. It was going to be a very difficult relationship, but Vary and I decided to start dating. Since they were basically the only person I cared about and regularly talked to at the time, I became heavily emotionally dependent on them. They were my everything. Around October, Vary started to act more distant with me, rarely showing affection. That changed in November when I followed up on one of their earlier requests to self-harm for them. After sending cut pictures to Vary, they started acting more affectionate to me, and they actively encouraged me to continue, meaning Vary was physically abusing me by emotionally blackmailing and manipulating me into self-harm. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. For months, Blare TV had known a secret about my relationship. The relationship was a total facade, originally meant to feed into Vary's savior complex, but now something only Blare had an active interest in. Nearly as soon as she discovered the truth, she began to plot her revenge for me looking at her nudes by taking advantage of this fake relationship I was involved in to harm my mental well-being. Blair conspired with Vary, planning out the reveal and extending the fake relationship, as she was instrumental in the maintenance of it. Blair also knew about Vary manipulating me into cutting, but did not prevent it. On the 4th of December, Blair DM'd me out of nowhere, proceeding to tell me about my relationship being fake in the most insufferable way possible, bragging about it, giggling, and taking joy in my suffering. Due to my emotional attachment to Vary and Blair's role in being the most intensely malicious actor, I started to really hate Blair. I understood what Blair and Vary did was wrong, so I set out to expose them, posting a document co-written by Cammy detailing Blair and Vary's actions during the past few months. This once again shook the community, and Blair was kicked out, declaring her intention to respond within a few days before leaving. Without the approval of Cammy, I then set out to make another document exposing Blair's sexual misconduct, which I genuinely was disgusted by, but also saw as a method of hurting her reputation even more firmly. Within the document, I mentioned vague rumours of Blair sexually harassing people, as well as her getting nudes from Callie, but the main section of the document was dedicated to Blair's interactions with an account named Shawla. Shawla was me. In late November, I had become extremely disillusioned with the way people treated me in commentary. Many people I had once considered friends hated me, a lot of people thought I was certain things I was not because of misinformation, and generally everyone acted like they were on thin ice around me. The Shawla account was meant as a secret alternate persona to escape that and be able to be my true self. It worked. Too well. I soon became friends and in mutuals with a lot of people I wanted to be, including Blare TV. After I found out what she had done to me regarding Vary, I had mixed feelings. I still had feelings for her, but hated her for what she had done. This led to the awkward situation of working on the Blare TV exposed document on my Pygirl persona, while also being friendly with her on my Shawla persona. Creating the Shawla account was dishonest and wrong, and it was a mistake. I messed up the worst by allowing the Shawla situation to go too far, when during a conversation that consisted of light flirting, she suddenly asked for nudes. I was shocked and stupidly decided to play along, sending her a Google image of a nude so I wouldn't have to send my own. Blair told me to delete all the DMs, which I did, and we didn't have any sexual conversation again obviously, but I began to realise I could use this interaction to make Blair seem like an even bigger creep. I added to the second document that Blair not only sexually harassed my Shawla persona by asking it for nudes out of nowhere, but in my opinion at the time, saved what she believed to be nudes of a minor, which I extrapolated to make the conclusion that she had a stockpile of saved nudes of minors, which I called a CP collection. Sufficient to say the second document was not well done. It included baseless rumours, wild assumptions, loaded language, and the main source was myself under an alternate identity. After I posted the document, it immediately got deserved criticism for being pointless. By the time Shawla was discovered to be me, I was also exiled once again. This time, I did not leave the internet, but rather kept to myself to communities I was not previously involved in, such as trans and political Twitter. I even blocked every commentary account to ensure I didn't have the urge to rejoin the community that clearly didn't want me anymore. That's how things largely went for 8 months, aside from me telling Blair to hurry up with the video and some events I'll go into detail with later on. On the 24th of August 2023, Blare TV uploaded her long-awaited response video, which was 6 hours and 46 minutes long. Despite Blair intending for it to radically change the narrative in her favour, it was widely dismissed, partly due to the length and partly due to the video's rhetoric and style. The content of the video was misleading and often wrong, but since barely anyone watched the video, this went mostly unnoticed. So that's the story between me and Blair so far. If you watched the previous video, you might notice some parts were repeated, but that's because some people might only watch this video and they will need to know some information that's also necessary for the first video. Let's begin breaking down Blair's video. There are two main trains of thought within Blair's video. One attempts to debunk the allegations I've made against her, and one alleges I abused Blair 8 times. Two of these abuses boil down to accusations that I lied about her in the documents, so those are intrinsically linked to the first train of thought. I want to get through this quickly and I don't want my response to become another 6-hour video, so I'll debunk some of the dumbest abuses first to get them out of the way. As you'll soon see with evidence and logic, I'll be able to eliminate these alleged abuses one by one until there are none left.
I'm so fucked up.
This is by far the worst thing I've done. If Blair just said what happened and reminded everyone how fucked up what I did was, she would have gotten an easy win. However, she somehow gets almost everything wrong about this. Blair states in her abuse list that I teamed up with a friend who was in a sexual relationship with Blair as a means to access her nudes non-consensually multiple times over multiple months out of possible jealousy. Now, there were a few things wrong with that, but the thing that sticks out the most is the multiple times over multiple months part. It happened once, 2 days before Lisa was exposed. Why did Blair just make something up off the top of her head? Let's listen to her reasoning.
So let's say that based on a few months that she started doing this on November 22nd, 2021, and I'm being extremely generous. Well, I engaged sexually with Lucy for the first time in late-ish November, and I actually can't remember the date because this account is dead. Pyro states that many people were victimized by the two of them. Now, of course, she doesn't specify, so we're gonna have to assume that it was around 6 or 7. Thanks a lot, Pyro. A new person was victimized on average of twice a month.
Why does she assume 6 or 7? Is that the definition for the word many now? The actual number was 4, by the way. And if Blare did a research, she would know that. In this clip of Aiden's interview with me, I say Lucy sent me other people's nudes 3 times, with the last one happening a couple weeks before.
There's a reason it happened like 3 times, it didn't just happen once.
I don't count me getting Blair's nudes 2 days before the Lucy doc as one of them, because for her sake I was trying to leave her out of it, which is also why I never told Mango Blair was one of the people I knew shared their nudes, despite the pressure I had on me in that situation.
If this ordeal was that frequent, then my multiple sexual interactions with Lucy between November and February mean that Pyro most likely did this to me, specifically on more than one occasion. Although this is built on very flimsy evidence, likely Jack.
Here Blair once again makes up off the top of her head that I got her nudes multiple times when that did not happen. She even admits it has flimsy evidence, it doesn't have any evidence, but she lists it on her abuse list anyway. The claim that this happened over multiple months is also given, once again without any evidence. Contrary to her no evidence, I think I have pretty good circumstantial evidence to prove I only got Blair's nudes once, 2 days before the Lucy doc. I understand it's not indestructible proof, but since Blair has no evidence at all, it's better than nothing. Now, I don't remember the exact date Lucy sent me Blair's nudes, but I can figure it out. I only got Blair's nudes from Lucy after I'd already sexted Blair, if you could call it that since she quit halfway through. The day after that, I talked to Lucy about it and how I was in love with her and found her attractive, since I'd only recently discovered my feelings about Blair, and the events that transpired the day before pushed those emotions to my forefront. Also, if you're wondering why I told Lucy, it's because at that time I had even worse social anxiety than I do now, and the only 3 people I talked privately to often were Vlizo, Blair, and Lucy. Therefore, me getting Blair's nudes from Lucy must have taken place less than 3 months before the Lucy doc, as I didn't even flirt with Blair in November 2021. In fact, she was one of my only friends I didn't flirt with. As you can see from the screenshot, on the 13th of February 2022, I used the Affinity Tweet website to automatically generate a Twitter Valentine, and I got Blare TV. It was a running gag for me to act disgusted at any mention of romantic or sexual attraction to Blair, so I replied, "No thanks," and Blair replied with, "Ew, no." This indicates that I had not started flirting with Blair yet, putting the date at least on February 14th or after, 9 days prior to the Lucy doc. But we can get more specific than that. I specifically remember I sexted Blair after I sexted another friend of mine. I know when I sexted this friend, February 19th, 2022. I know this due to some tweets replying to someone's private account I found. I won't give any more details because this person is irrelevant otherwise and I don't want to breach any privacy. I can tell Blair in DMs the specifics and the evidence if she doubts this, but I'm not making it public. So, I know that I must have sexted Blair no earlier than the 20th of February 2022, specifically the evening for me, which is the time of day I remember it happening. Since, as I mentioned in my Lucy doc, I spent all of the 22nd of February gathering evidence on Lucy, that takes off a day there too. That means the time span in which I could have received Blair's nudes was 1 day and a bit. Blair hypothetically could claim I got her nudes multiple times or whatever during this time, but I remember it happening once, and I've never claimed otherwise. The burden of proof is on the one making the accusation, and there's no reason to believe it happened multiple times. Later on in the video, Blair also compares me not telling her about Lucy sharing her nudes to Blair not telling me that the relationship she was instrumental in continuing was fake.
How strange is it? You benefit and participate in the abuse of someone and refuse to tell them for a prolonged period of time. But when that same person refuses to tell you that you're being emotionally led on, you just bitch and cry about how terrible everything is when one of your self-described victims is just giving you a less potent taste of your own medicine.
Putting aside the obvious logical errors, this is a stupid comparison to make. Assuming I got her nudes on the evening of the 20th of February, the earliest possible date, that gives me 1 day to tell Blair, the 21st of February. I was planning to tell her during the 22nd, but my day was constantly interrupted by, pretty important shenanigans that I think you could understand took up my time. Remember, when I tell Blair about what happened, I would likely lose both Blair and Lucy as friends, so it was a very stressful time where it was hard for me to think. Even if you disregard that as relevant, do you really think waiting 1 day to tell someone that a person has spread their nudes is a wholly unreasonable length of time? If you report abuse more than a day after you find out, does that make you a terrible person? Obviously not. Blair making this comparison is laughable. Blair repeats the fiction of me accessing her nudes multiple times over multiple months, frequently throughout a video, trying to repeat it often enough to create an illusion of truth.
In order to non-consensually access intimate sexual material of them multiple times over multiple months.
This is often called the big lie technique of manipulation, and Blair uses it very liberally in this video, especially with her usage of the term abuser. Talking about abuse, let's tackle the question of whether what I did was sexual abuse, as Blare claims. Blare goes on for a few minutes describing what she believes to be the criteria for sexual abuse. However, I looked at all the sources she links in her references and sources document, and I couldn't find anything that backed up what she said. Not to mention, she just contradicts herself more than half an hour after giving a definition. This clearly isn't any professional standard.
It has to happen more than once. And by the way, even if Pie Girl only engaged in revenge porn of me once, it still qualifies her as an abuser. Psychological abuse and sexual abuse have different qualifiers. Pie Girl is a fucking idiot.
Taking a look at the 3 sources Blare lists, none of them say what I did was sexual abuse. They do say sending or sharing non-consensual sexual images of someone is sexual abuse, but that's not what I did. I didn't send or share anything, I accepted, which is still really bad but isn't the same thing. The page from the NSVRC is actually also extremely vague and says sexual abuse can be any type of sexual harassment that takes place through screens. Now, I do consider what I did to Blare to be sexual harassment, but this is a way broader definition than most, and if you consider any online sexual harassment as abuse, then people who type in Pokemon's Twitch chat that they want to suck her toes are abusers, and so is Blare herself. Now, the problem with defining online sexual abuse is that it's a new concept, so every website and group seems to have a different definition, ranging from as specific as when one person manipulates another person to get them to do something sexual, to as vague as online sexual harassment. In real life, abuse and harassment are considered two distinct, although often overlapping things, but if Blare wants to make the case that they are the same online, she is free to do so, because the only way you can consider what I did sexual abuse is if you consider all forms of online sexual harassment abuse. However, if you concede that's the case, then Blare is admitting she herself is a repeat sexual abuser. Remember, you only have to sexually abuse once to be a sexual abuser, so if you've ever sent a DM or replied to someone with a sexual comment who felt kind of uncomfortable about it even once, you're not just a degenerate, but a sexual abuser, at least according to Blare. Now, I think online sexual harassment is bad, and if you're making weird comments below sniper videos or telling e-girls you're going to infiltrate their pussy, you're being creepy and you should stop that. However, calling any online sexual harassment sexual abuse seems like a step too far and a massive oversimplification, so that's one abuse off the list. Oh, I nearly forgot. Blare uses 2 other seemingly damning arguments to say I'm an abuser. One is that I called the people who I received nudes of from Lucy victims.
And she does use the word victim here, so fuck you, she admits it.
They are victims of Lucy's sexual abuse and my sexual harassment. If someone is a victim, it doesn't mean they were necessarily abused. It means they were hurt, tricked, or were the object of misfortune, often due to someone or something else. Blare is absolutely a victim, but she was not a victim of any abuse by me. The other argument is perhaps the funniest of the video.
By the way, framing yourself as a victim in a situation where you were engaging in abuse is, you guessed it, an abuse tactic.
Basically, you said you're not the abuser, that's exactly what an abuser would say. You know who else would say that? Someone who isn't an abuser. This is literally toddler-level reasoning. Let's move on. Blare claims that I abused her by befriending her friends to try to get her to hate me less. Now, while Blare dramatically overstates this and it's not abuse while I'll get into, that is what happened.
So let's play this one more time.
In Blare's DMs you once said you made friends with some of her friends so she had to be reminded of you. I did try to become friends with 2 of Blare's friends back in June after she told me she didn't want to think of me. I gave up after a couple days and apologized to Blare, and even then I never tried to hurt Blare. I just wanted to make it harder for her to hate me by making her around people who like me. It was a shitty thing to do, but it's not abuse and no way comparable to this.
She's referencing this DM right here.
That's why I tried to make friends with so many of your friends, so you couldn't escape seeing me.
Have you noticed the fact that these 2 do not line up 1-to-1?
I did try to become friends with 2 of Blare's friends back in June after she told me she didn't want to think of me.
First of all, the wording is extremely passive, just she had to be reminded of me despite using aggressive wording for me. The wording she used when informing me was so you could never escape seeing me. But you have to understand, that sounds emotionally abusive and makes her look bad, and she can't look bad. She barely did anything wrong. Blare's the true villain. I wonder why she didn't show the DM she was referring to. Second of all, she said she tried to make friends with many of my friends when in the document she says it's only 2. I'm more inclined to believe the screenshot because here she has nothing to lose by being honest in a conversation not burned by optics, whereas she needs to make herself look good in order for this to work. I believe unfiltered pie is more truthful than filtered pie.
To get into the details, back in June when I returned to the internet, one day when I was particularly missing Blare, I got this dumb idea in my head that maybe if I become friends with some more of Blare's friends, then she'll be less likely to hate me because she can see how all her friends understand I'm just a normal gal again. This didn't amount to much and I stopped this after literally a few days. The only 2 people I attempted this with were Pogfrog and B, and all I did was reply to some of their tweets because that's the extent I felt comfortable with talking to new people. That's right, all I did was reply a few times to 2 of Blare's friends' tweets for a few days, which barely means anything anyway, since I already interacted with many of Blare's other friends so much because I was already friends with them. The second part in this DM here about I actually became proper friends with a lot of them too, I can't exactly remember what it means. We can infer from the second part of the sentence, which means that was partly the reason I made some of the friends I did. I believe this refers to Vari and Jaden, who I did not become friends with for the purpose of getting Blair to like me, but I understood it as a natural benefit after already organically becoming friends with them. In fact, with Vari, I didn't even know they were Blair's friend until after we had talked for 8 hours in DMs, by which time we were already friends. I barely made any friends during this period of time, especially as I spent almost all my spare time either making videos or talking with Vari. And is it that crazy to think that my new friends would end up being friends with Blair, when I wanted to befriend other trans people and she was friends with basically every trans person in the community? In fact, here Blair suggests I should have left the commentary community entirely so she wouldn't have to be reminded of me.
And you wanna know something else? Since the selfish bitch possessed not enough humility to leave the community of her new victim, the only way to not be plagued with constant reminders of her is to leave the communities we share that also have the majority of my friends. So essentially, if you don't want to be reminded of your abuser, just leave the place where all your friends are. Just alter the victim's life in order to accommodate the abuser.
This is psychotic. She's saying that since I had her once, I shouldn't be in the commentary community just because she is there. I didn't talk to her, she blocked me, that's not my problem. The commentary community is also where all of my friends were too, and I was there before she was, so she doesn't have full control over where I'm allowed an online presence.
Deliberately trying to hurt me over a prolonged period of time as a means to change my mind about you is blatant emotional manipulation, which, yes, is abuse.
Blair twists history to say that I was actually trying to hurt her. This is just not true, which I even say in the original rebuttal. I replied to a couple of her friends' tweets for a few days. That's not trying to hurt you over an extended period of time. I wasn't trying to exacerbate her trauma at all, but lessen it, regardless of what happened. Trying to stretch a desperate attempt to ease tensions into some nefarious malicious plot to harm her is disingenuous. Nevertheless, even if it was way less than she made it out to be, I'm sorry to her for trying to interact with her friends, despite her saying to me she didn't want to see me. Now, despite what Blake claims, back in July I did apologise to her for causing her to be reminded of me from interacting with our shared friends. However, I admit it's not a very good apology and it's overly vague by what I actually mean. I don't think I even went back to look at the apology when I wrote I apologise in the document, I just remembered that I had done so. But is this abuse? For 2 days I tried to become friends with a couple of Blair's friends to make Blair hopefully like me more. I think you could say it's manipulative, but Blair's claim is built upon the presupposition that I abused her, which as we've discovered from the last section is false. So let's dispel with the abuse-victim dynamic for a second and transpose this onto a more familiar setting. You're in high school and your friend doesn't like you now because you said some pretty terrible stuff in a fight with them. You regret the fight and want to be friends again, but you don't know how. You get the idea to try to talk to a couple people in their friend circle, so you can eventually join it and they'll get over hating you faster. You proceed with your plan but give up after a few days. Was this plan destined to fail? Yes. Should you have let your friend make things up with you on their own terms? Yes. But were you abusing them? Of course not. Frankly, becoming friends with someone isn't always straightforward. Just like relationships, trying to make friendships often involves a subtle form of manipulation. How using a wingman could be considered a form of manipulation in many cases. For 2 days, I tried to befriend Blair through her friends, something which I barely even tried and regretted after. This isn't abuse, it's just cringe desperation, which I am absolutely guilty of. While this is not listed as one of the abuses, Blair often brings it up and treats it like some terrible thing a psychopath would do.
Michael decided to showcase that quote-unquote remorse by mocking her victim publicly. And when she was called out for this, she decided to respond by continuing to mock her victim. So if she did feel remorse, all attempts at conveying it are counter-fucking-intuitive.
She even uses it to justify her actions towards me, so I thought I should probably address this. This is all false. You see, there are 2 separate screenshots she puts on screen. One is me apologising for making jokes about my controversy, and one is from later on that I'll address after. This DM I sent was in July when I wanted to talk with Blair one last time, before I believed I would never be online again. Blair got mad at me for making jokes about my controversy, which I apologised for, because I thought I should have been humbler, and also it went against the rules I set for myself. But notice how Blair never specifies what the jokes were. That's because I made only 2 jokes as far as I can remember on my Twitter during my May comeback, and neither mocked her or the situation regarding me accepting nudes from friends. One was a Photoshop edit of me with Jeffrey Epstein, and one was the edit of the classic Trump pervert alert tweet, but about me. Both of these jokes were making fun of the people calling me a pedo, which is why the memes compared me to pedophiles like Epstein and Anthony Weiner. This is simple media comprehension, and Blare I would think has that, so this is twisting me joking about people making false allegations about me into me mocking what I did to her, which was something completely different. The straws continue to be grasped. The second screenshot she shows is of my bio, which in November included caca of televisions, which she describes as mocking her victims. Now this is very obviously not about any drama, but poking fun at the fact that Blare had very obvious feelings for Vary, yet I was dating them. AKA, I cucked her. But doesn't that seem a bit mean-spirited? No, not if you have the full context. You see, me and Blare were competing for Vary's affection in May to July 2022. She posted a tweet about having a 4-hour call with him, so the next day I posted a tweet about having a 5-hour call with him. Then a few days later she posted about having a 6-hour call with him. I posted a screenshot of me playing Minecraft with Vary, and quite literally the next day, Blare tweets about having a Minecraft date planned with Vary. They were part of a little game called Romantic Competition that Blare was willingly, actively engaged in. Now, Blare says some weird stuff to her friends sometimes, and she would make very sexual and weird comments about Vary. So when I actually started dating Vary and Blare would continue to say very weird stuff about her, I would feel very uncomfortable about it as anyone in a monogamous relationship would, especially since I knew Blare was romantically interested in them, and Vary never interacted with those weird replies. I talked to Vary about it on multiple occasions, and they told me they told Blare to stop multiple times. Of course, Vary could have been lying because they're a liar, but nevertheless that's what I believed, and Blare was fucked up for one-sidedly sexually flirting with someone she thought at the time was in a normal relationship. Anyway, even after Vary told me they told Blare to stop, Blare never stopped. I did not want to interact with Blare, but I did anyway because this was the moment I was going to put my foot down because Blair's behaviour was unacceptable, and I wouldn't accept anyone disrespecting my partner and relationship like that. Blare goes over this a bit when she addresses the part of the first doc where I mentioned that she flipped out at me over her being sexual towards Vary while I was dating them.
In this particular instance, I was mainly thinking about the DM I most recently sent that involved her seemingly weaponizing her relationship to her fucking victim. Also, lording a relationship over her victims aside, the way she presents her demands are so stupid and kinda sad. She calls the public flirtatious comments I was making towards Vary extremely sexual and creepy. This feels like almost an attempt to paint me as a creepy boundary-ignoring sexual predator. And don't worry, this is only the beginning. Oh my fucking god. Anyways, I call projection. The extremely creepy comments are them saying shit like, I'm like a dog, I see you as a sister, I have the mind of a 12-year-old, and me saying shit like, then I'm Kira the Wolf, then I'm a Rick and Morty writer, then I'm super stoked to have sex with you because I have pedophilic tendencies. Received it. May I remind you that I'm saying this to a person who draws gore of people and indulges in a fucked up personality. The extremely sexual and creepy comments are just edgy humor. But hey, I guess edgy humor is only bad when I do it because I'm the villain and I'm bad and evil and stuff. Although if they're fine with it, you should definitely have a talk with who you think is your partner about that ordeal, rather than the person who's just adhering to friendship boundaries. As stated, this feels like an attempt to paint me as a predator, which is a terrible move considering our prior interactions.
Blare claims that all she did was make some edgy jokes and I was weaponizing my relationship to hurt her. Funny how, as an example, she shows probably the tamest joke she's ever made. She'd think this is normal behaviour towards someone who's in a relationship and shows no sign of reciprocating these comments. Calling these edgy jokes is less believable than Tomato Man calling his sexting DMs jokes, especially since she had a massive crush on them. Let me ask you a question. If you were in a relationship with someone and someone was making these sort of tweets about them, would you be comfortable with that? I'll take a wild guess and say no. In fact, I even asked a friend whether they would confront Blare in my situation because I was hesitant to, and they said absolutely. And yes, a couple of those tweets are from just before we started dating, however it provides context to show the way that Blare acted towards Vary for a while, and I know Blare would have said much more in Vary's DMs. Blare literally showing the tamest joke is just a way for her to deflect. Not only that, but it's comparable to a lie because it twists the situation so much and blatantly omits what I'm talking about to make her seem so innocent. Because Blare can never do anything wrong, it's all pie and she's such an abuser. Vary literally told me they told Blare to stop saying sexual stuff about them. Regardless of whether they lied or not, from my perspective, Blare was continuously sexually harassing my partner, the person I loved the most. Also, Blare calls this within her friendship boundaries. I won't even make a point about how it's still weird to make so many sexual comments about someone who doesn't reciprocate, but what I will say is that if someone is in a relationship, it's not just about their friendship boundaries. You also have to take into account the relationship they're in, which at the time they believed was a real one.
Why? Because she has a hunch. A fucking hunch that I might like her partner a little.
It seems Blare thinks she can flirt with anyone, even if they're in a relationship, as long as they don't actively oppose her and call her out for it. Also, Blair says I just had a hunch she liked Blair, so I shouldn't have mocked her over it. Like, no, we engaged in romantic competition for them, and she even admits here that her feelings for them were obvious. To say nothing of Vary literally telling me about Blair confessing her love and asking to date them. Cut the crap.
Being angry with them is only going to cause strain on all three of the individuals. This is called being a good partner. Stop getting your relationship advice off of fucking Reddit. And who the fuck are you to talk in your little goodbye address for when you got ducks? You literally confessed your love to me publicly, you fucking creep. So it's fine when you confess your love to someone while you're in a relationship with someone, but if someone is making flirtatious jokes with your partner, suddenly it's extremely sexually creepy and acceptable to go all erratic rage on them. That sounds healthy.
This is a very interesting bit too. Blair claims I went into a massive rage at them and I should have been polite. I'll read the full message I sent and then Blair's response. You decide for yourselves whether this is something out of line to someone you believe is continuously sexually harassing your partner. By the way, Blair, there's also a clear difference between saying that you have romantic feelings for someone in a goodbye note that you believe will be the last time you can talk with anyone, and making tweets about how much they want to make out with your partner, and joking about sexing them with the very obvious undertone of sexual desire. Hey, I don't want to talk to you, and you don't want to talk to me. This doesn't have anything to do with the past because I'm sure we can both agree that neither of us have any more to say on that front. I didn't want to have to contact you again and I won't after telling you this. Please cool it with the sexual jokes and over-the-top flirting with Vary. As their girlfriend, it's really uncomfortable for me, especially given our history. Especially the sexual stuff you say about them, it's just weird and gross. I have no problems, and it's not my place to complain, with you guys being besties or engaging in some light flirting, but this is getting too far. I asked a friend if it's normal for me to feel uncomfortable from this, since I wanted to make sure I'm not insane or anything, and she said if she was in my place she'd feel the same way. You've stopped acting like this with all your other friends, so it's not an integral part of your friendship or anything. In fact, Vary seems to be one of, if not the only friend you're being weird about, so there's no excuses. I'm sorry I'm bothering you, but ignoring our past, I would really appreciate it if you stopped heavily flirting with and making sexual jokes about the person I'm in relationship with. Not cool. On the off chance you're into them, it ain't happening lol. I won't bother you again. Good luck and see ya. Feel free to block me or whatever after seeing this, as long as you take in what I said.
Whatever. But if this proves anything, it ultimately proves that you consistently stalk my account. Fuck off. I don't give a shit about stuff like YouTube because I barely touch it, but the fact that you scour my accounts and even know when I haven't stopped certain jokes is fucking creepy. As well, you're lucky I'm a nicer person and will actually abide by your request, because you should realize you don't get to make demands to me about what makes you uncomfortable.
Remember, that was Blair's response to me telling them to stop sexually harassing my partner. She seems to get very mad if someone calls her out over anything to do with her sexual behaviour, almost like she sees it as a God-given right to be as sexual as she wants to anyone, but we'll tackle that aspect of her personality later. I've pretty brutally dismantled this mocking claim, so while it's not getting rid of anything on the abuse list, it removes something she consistently mentions as a major reason for her revenge on me, therefore putting into question more aspects of the justification for her actions.
You did that! You! For shame!
This is another section that is so blatantly manipulative and bad, I struggled to think of why she decided to include it in the final video, especially given how long it is. Blare breaks down in detail and analyses a DM I sent her on the 28th of December 2022, where I rant and get upset and angry with her.
I almost forgot. The important thing that needs to be noted is that unlike the last 3 piles of dog shit we just analyzed, this isn't meant for public consumption, rather a perception of her folly meant for my own eyes. It is her presumably raw and unfiltered opinions lifted of the burden of optics. Using this, we can more clearly analyze how she operated with this whole thing.
The whole section of the video dedicated to this is unnecessary. For the actual context to this, a few days after the documents, my closest and oldest friend left me because I was too emotionally unstable to deal with and didn't listen to their advice, which I understand now. I was having a serious mental breakdown, worse in fact than when the community started to hate me a few days earlier. I was an absolute wreck, and V can attest to this. I was very unstable and I lashed out at a few people. Even a few weeks after V left me, I said some of the worst and nastiest things I've ever said to a close friend. I blew up at them just because I thought some small dumb thing meant they were to blame for the whole thing. Another one of the people I lashed out at was Blair, as I was understandably still very mad at her and blamed her for the situation since her emotionally abusing me with Vary was what eventually led to V dropping me. I know one thing caused another thing caused another thing, but without one, the other wouldn't have happened. Blair mocks this DM and says it sounds like it was written by a toddler and it's overly emotional. Like, fair enough, no disagreements here. Of course I was emotional. I was in the middle of a panic attack / mental breakdown. I'm not spending days thinking of logical arguments to dismantle Blair. And because of that, analysing and breaking this down sentence by sentence is very stupid and either a way to add more flimsy arguments to an already dogshit video, or to inflate the length of the video even more than it's already been inflated. The main argument Blair makes here is that Kai abused me and blamed me for her shitty life, so she is an even abuser. First of all, I never abused her. Second of all, I'm not blaming her for the sort of thing here. And third of all, I'm writing this in the middle of a mental breakdown, and she can't analyse this completely logically. It's not even the only time Blair uses stuff I wrote during what she describes as a panic attack and analyses it like it was a formal statement.
She says not to take all this too seriously, but I disagree. This is an example of an unfiltered, over-emotional Michael, several times more prone to Freudian slips. There is some insight we can gain from this. Multiple tweets show her expressing deja vu because she's experienced this before. Yeah, because you're a terrible fucking person. Say what you will about the inaccuracies of Haya's video, but it's only a matter of time before you shit yourself. Cry. I hope the community won't give her a third chance, or fourth.
What's most interesting to me is that Blair thinks Cammy is such a terrible person for publicising her mental breakdown, yet she publicised my mental breakdown earlier.
And I failed to see the comedic value of my distressed reaction to being verbally abused by someone. Why did you publicize this, Cameron? It holds no relevance to the documents or the controversy, Cameron. And paired with all the subtweets you get off to making after the coast was clear, Cameron, it almost feels like this was just cheap shot for cheap shot's sakes, Cameron. Why the fuck are you publicizing an abuse victim's breakdown over being abused, Cameron, and using it as a cheap shot against her, Cameron?
Honestly, I think it was terrible of Cammy to post those screenshots. I'm not defending it at all, but what Cammy did was somehow better than if he decided to spend 20 minutes analysing the exact wording of the breakdown DMs and treating it like actual arguments.
As you can see here, Blare Television states, I want you to attempt suicide right now, therefore endorsing someone harming themselves. This goes beyond simply not stopping self-harm, but actively encouraging it. However, this isn't the worst thing that Blare Television has done, as evidenced by this tweet right here.
See how dumb that sounds, Blair? That's how dumb you sound. Another abuse debunked.
I don't want you stalking anyone tonight.
Oh, okay. Have it your own way, Marge. I'll be back in a minute. I'm going outside to stalk Blare TV.
Now, this is the one allegation that a lot of people seem to believe, but like all the others, this is just as rubbish. Her chart reads that one of the abusive things I've done is, quote, despite driving me off of most social media, began stalking me on my only active ones, trying to befriend more people she thinks are close to me under the guise of wanting to know them better and sending DMs through people to taunt me. First of all, I apparently began stalking Blair on her only active social media, aka her Letterboxd.
Liking reviews for over 2 months, some of obscure Star Trek media that she's never seen. Following me the second new activity on my account drops. She can feign that she's not obsessed, but she absolutely is.
Her proof of this is that for a few months starting from June, I would like her Letterboxd reviews every once in a while. Now, if you've forgotten, Blair took 8 months to make this response. The absurd length of time got me understandably impatient, especially as some people told me that maybe or maybe not, she was dropping the response. I asked friends I had in common with Blair whether it would be coming out soon, which Blair twists into me sending DMs through people to taunt her, but I'll get the usual response of, it's coming in a few weeks, and then a few weeks later it's not out.
Sending me covert DMs.
Now, I was annoyed and thought, I'll just remind her through liking her Letterboxd reviews that I'm still here. This is still a situation. Hurry up, please. I don't regret it at all. I was waiting months for her to respond and she was watching Star Trek movies. Of course I'll tell her to hurry up. You might think this is just a lie and an excuse I made up for why I did it while I was writing the script, but for all Blair loves to show screenshots in a video and how she basically showed every other interaction I had with her since the documents, she leaves out a message I sent to her via Jalen in early August, where I explicitly say that I'd like the Letterboxd reviews to hurry her up. Oh, I wonder why that one is one of the very few screenshots she doesn't leave in. It wasn't the first time I told her to hurry up either. She said she would take a few days and ended up taking 8 months. If you don't think she took too long, you're an idiot. Me telling Blair to hurry up did not mortally wound her and isn't abuse. Blair also claims I still try to make friends with her friends to get as close to her as possible.
She's been trying to befriend current and former friends of mine to get as close to me as possible.
However, this is again false. A friend of Blair's came to me with her story of being sexually harassed by her, and both people I tried to talk to for that reason only. I'm surprised Blair would have a problem with that unless she wanted me to go along with the sexual harassment allegation without getting verification from multiple sources. Another very strange argument Blair uses is that I commissioned her ex-girlfriend for art, who I didn't even know was ex at the time I commissioned her. Blair never said they dated. The only potential clue is one Letterboxd review that doesn't even say who she's talking about, which eventually was the reason I pieced it together weeks after I commissioned her. And I mean, there aren't that many artists in commentary. I'd known Dr. Sleepyhead for a while due to her doing art for Turkey Tom, and we had mutual friends. The fact that she consistently brings her up like a pissed off ex-lover,
because people are starting to tolerate her again, like Bunk for instance. And don't even get me started on Dr. Sleepyhead and that little commission back in 2023-63. People will just tolerate her again, and Dr. Sleepyhead will probably do more artwork for her. And wouldn't it also be funny that for this video, Pygo needed avatar stills and channel branding? And wouldn't it also be funny if the artist Pygo decided to commission just so happened to be my ex-girlfriend?
Exactly like a pissed off ex-lover, shows that this isn't even really a point, it's just a way for her to vent her emotions towards her ex-girlfriend, which is very strange to do in a video defending herself from and making allegations of abuse. Also, around the same time, Blair was trying to siphon information off my best friend, so even if I did know she dated her at the time, she would be engaging in similar behaviour. Not to mention that Blair is expressing that a girl she semi-dated a year ago shouldn't do commissions for someone she doesn't like? That's incredibly controlling and weird behaviour. Who your ex-girlfriend does commissions for is none of your business. Stop with this creepy hyper-controlling behaviour. This is certainly red flags for any sort of relationship. The final part of the stalker allegation actually comes from after the video was released, if you can believe it.
Pie-Girl made a fucking voice AI of me and then deleted it when it was found. What an actual fucking creep. I feel kinda disgusted right now. No fucking idea what this creep made it say. I hope to hell it's fake, but it looks extremely unlikely. I was on the page yesterday. Fucking creep.
Boo-hoo, she made a meme edit of my public pre-trans face. I made a meme edit of a public post-trans voice. Who cares? And since I'm obviously going to feel way more sensitive about my pre-trans face than she does about a post-trans voice, what she did is probably worse anyways. Also, I don't see literally any issue with this. I made the AI model for this very video to voice the DM she herself wrote with her own voice and a few memes.
Hey everybody. I'm a stupid moron with an ugly face and a big butt, and my butt smells, and I like to kiss my own butt.
Also, I didn't delete it, I privated it, because I didn't know I'd accidentally made it public. She would know this if a friend who reported the AI model showed her the response I gave there, or maybe she saw it but just decided to leave out information. The whole AI thing is just dumb. It's a public voice. Just to troll her, by the way, guys, I've left a link in the description to a 1-hour compilation album of AI Blair singing all sorts of songs from FNAF to Sinatra. Check it out. Ultimately, this whole stalking allegation is toothless and has no evidence to back it up. Another alleged abuse, another false allegation. And I find it interesting Blair calls me a stalker, given that she was clearly looking at my tweets months after I left the community. Oh, and also, in August, one of Blair's friends told me that Blair was suspicious of them because she found out they were Discord friends with me. The thing is, I only friended that person 15 minutes before I was told that, and I wasn't friended with Blair obviously, which means that Blair must have been checking my Discord friends list extremely regularly, not something a non-stalker usually does. Two alleged abuses are connected to the Shaw situation that I referenced at the beginning of the video, where I created another account to interact with the commentary community without my baggage, then ended up getting sexually harassed by Blair, which I used in the second document without making public that it was me. This was a colossal L on my part. Well past that, it was also desperate, cringy, manipulative, and weird. It was a big mistake to do the whole using another account to interact with people routine, and using interactions from the account in the document without the context that it was me was disingenuous and just plain wrong. I would leave it there because there's not any defense of that, and Blair would have a good point against me I wouldn't argue with. However, just like with the first, abuse, Blair takes it to such an extreme level I have to break down some of the things she says that are absolutely wrong. The sixth abuse Blair lists contains multiple claims, all of which are false. One claims that I pretended to have romantic feelings for her on the account.
Shalla admitted to having romantic feelings for me. I said that was cute.
I did express romantic feelings, but they were entirely real. I knew she wouldn't reciprocate them, but to borrow a word from Blair, it was cathartic to admit it to her virtual face. While making up romantic feelings for malicious purposes is likely abuse, admitting real ones for no malicious purpose, even through an alternate account, is not. The next claim is that I flirted with her while having knowledge of her hypersexuality. I never sexually flirted with Blare, that is of course until after she literally asked me for nudes out of nowhere. This sort of light flirting ooh-woo talk is common in the trans community, and it's just how trans girls interact online. It doesn't mean, please have sex with me. Remember, I was overly feminine on the Charlotte account too, because it was an outlet for my femininity. I couldn't really display it on my pi persona. The way Blare interacted with Ringo was just as lewd as I was to her, meaning not at all. The flirting was Blare calling me cute and giving me compliments, as well as me going "aww" and keyboard smashing. That might be unusual for commentators, but on trans Twitter, and I know Blare knows this is just how everyone interacts. Notice how in this DM I express happiness at being complimented in a feminine way, indicating that Blare calling me cute felt nice because of the gender affirmation, not due to any sexual undertones. If Blare thinks the conversation we had is the same as consent to ask for nudes, she doesn't understand consent. In fact, it would mean she probably thinks she gets consent to ask for nudes basically any time she talks to a trans girl, because 90% of them talk like that, which would actually explain a lot. Blare says that I steered the conversation to a sexual nature.
Okay, first of all, I don't give a shit if you didn't try to catfish me. That's literally what you fucking did. At any point, you could have backed out, but you, yes you, continue to push it forward. Do or do not. There's no try here, dumb fuck. You catfished me, and as for everything else, you have officially stepped out of line. It's one thing to maliciously omit details about the sequence of events in order to paint someone as a predator, but it is a completely different level of cunt. To frame yourself as the victim of my sexual harassment when in this situation you were attempting to fraudulently enter a sexual relationship with me after I told you numerous times that you disgusted me after you violated me. You are not a victim for steering the conversation that way, friend.
This is just a lie. Let's actually take a look at the DMs. Blare was the one to first call me cute. Blare was the one who first said she wanted to get me flustered. Blare was the one to compliment my thighs and say she wanted to kiss them. Blare was the one to ask for nudes after 40 minutes and no sexual discussion. But yeah, sure, I was the one who steered the conversation that way. The gaslighting here is insane. One particular piece of evidence Blare uses is that I sent a picture of my thighs with clothes on in her DMs. But again, she has this wildly out of context. First of all, just earlier in the same Discord conversation, she says my hips and thighs look good, referencing a picture which I posted to Twitter that Blare liked. Due to that compliment, I sent her a picture of my thighs that I had already publicly posted to Twitter. So she complimented a picture I had posted to my public Twitter, which led me to repost a public image from my Twitter focused on the focal point of the compliment, my thighs. All public images, nothing Blare wouldn't deny isn't sexual if she complimented them in a Twitter reply rather than a DM. The only proof Blare has that I was sexual back to her is, no proof at all.
But then you realize that I mentioned earlier that Charlotte asked if we could do it again. Again, I can't prove this, but if Pyro is allowed to reference events and calls that she can't prove, and we treat them as legitimate, then I'm allowed to reference deleted events. Again, I can't prove this.
That is a colossal lie, and a cope for having no evidence. The only thing I say happened in a call that I can't specifically prove per se is that Vari suggested that I cut myself, which is exactly the sort of thing they would do. They have a blood kink. Blare said herself that they love when people cut their names into themselves. Blare has no proof of what she's saying here whatsoever, and since she's lied about it many times in this very video, and she has a serial habit of lying to me to hurt me, she has nowhere near enough credibility for anyone to be able to take her upon her word for something she has zero proof on. Despite all this, Blare still claims that I steered the conversation sexually to extract dirt and get nudes. If I was looking for nudes, then why didn't I ever try to engage with her sexually before or after her asking me for nudes? And if I was trying to extract dirt, then why would I never try to ask her about anything that could potentially get dirt on her? Or is Blare assuming I somehow predicted she would sexually harass me? While I did end up using the interaction in the document, I never did anything to shape or cause the interaction for that purpose. I only used it once it had already taken place. All of this renders abuse number 6 debunked. But what about abuse number 5? Well, abuse number 5 reads, created a false persona after first victimizing me, tried to get my attention on it by stalking my Twitter and using this deceptive identity to become close to me, knowing I'd eventually try to talk with her. Now, while this is technically true and bad and everything and I disavow, it didn't have malicious intent and just happened because I felt really lonely and wanted to talk to people I missed. That is not an excuse or justification for it, but it makes it really difficult for me to call it abuse. But if you do decide to call it abuse, and even if you don't, Blare TV basically did a version of what I did with a Shaw thing to me, but 100 times worse. In fact, you could also say Blare basically attempted to repeat the Vari incident, only this time explicitly instigating and planning the fake relationship from the start.
Oh shit, here we go again.
On the 10th of July 2023, I was talking to Droid, an artist friend of Blair's I'd known since 2021, when she mentioned to me she cut Blair off because she was sexually harassed by her. I'll expand on the details of that in a later section, but what's important is it got me into contact with a friend of Blair's named Paige. Since Paige was involved with the Droid sexual harassment incident, I asked her about that and we started talking. Paige did tell Blair that I had friended her, but nevertheless told me her intentions for telling me information on Blair were purely virtuous. I would ask Paige for information on events surrounding Blair's controversies and her upcoming response, rejecting Paige's offers to give more information than necessary. This is where Blair comes into the picture. Blare TV told Paige she wanted her to send DMs of conversations with me, but not just of our existing conversations. You see, Blair was intending to use Paige as a mouthpiece to puppet a conversation, to extract information.
I'm back. You didn't say anything, right?
No, what do I do?
I'll guide you in a bit. Just tell her that you're gonna be busy for a while.
Okay.
You promise this isn't a repeat of last time and that you're not actually talking right now?
No, Pi is asleep, I think. She's in the UK, right?
Australia. Do you have any more screenshots, by the way?
No, that's it. What do I say?
Nothing.
Do I unfriend her?
Don't do anything.
If it was just that, Blair catfishing me via proxy for information like I did with the Shaw account, it would be weird, manipulative, and wrong, just like what I did, but not insane and abusive. However, Blair went further than that. This DM between Blair and Paige reveals something disturbing. Paige asks whether Blair wants her to become a femme fatale, a seductive and beautiful woman who brings disaster to anyone with whom she becomes romantically involved. Blair responds with a backstory for her to use, which in large part is a romantic backstory, that she is recently single, not due to herself, and perceptive.
So, there will be no bait and switch, just a retrieval of information.
Just get me into GC.
Shit, I actually have to bait her, because that proves that all the things she's looking for are untrue. So, do you want to hear your cover story?
So, like, am I becoming a femme fatale?
We broke up about a week ago. You broke up with me because I wasn't the best partner. You're also very perceptive and emotionally intelligent.
Wait, what?
That's your cover story.
Blair giving a romantic backstory to Paige's gay-up so that I'm definitely aware she's single doesn't seem to indicate anything other than Blair trying to get me to fall for Paige. Blair encouraged Paige to seduce me, basically coaxing her into attempting to entrap me into a false relationship. She even admits this herself in a retroactive justification.
But on the rare occasion I accidentally myself into the opportunity, I could definitely use a fake relationship to get information out of you, and have there be nothing wrong with it considering you've literally done the exact same thing completely unprovoked. Like, still, in this context, orchestrating a relationship is a no-go, but a retrieval of information, yes go.
Now, either Paige is stupid enough to leak all of this immediately and still continue with Blair's plan, or mentally ill enough to schizophrenically fall in love after barely talking, but Paige confessed her love for me the next day, which I rejected. Either way, every so often to make sure Blair never found out I knew about her plan, Paige would have to tell me to pretend to know nothing while she funneled Blair's questions to me. Blair wouldn't know yet that a plan was an utter failure, but my own strong doubts about Paige would begin soon enough. On the 2nd of August, Paige would make up a lie that I sent her an unsolicited nude, also attempting to gaslight me about it. I told her to stop being a manipulative psychopath and pressed her until she confessed she made it all up. Paige also lied to Blair about it, later admitting to her that she had made it up as well. The interesting thing about that is that Blair was so distraught that the allegations towards me were fake that she absolutely lashed out at Paige and claimed to be the victim of the whole situation.
I apologize, I was trying to be believable.
That's not a defense. You were trying to be believable so you could further victimize me. You are an abuser.
Can you please stop calling me that?
Why should I? Give me a reason as to why you aren't an abuser, and I will stop calling you it.
That's right, I was falsely accused of sending unsolicited nudes, and Blair was the one who claimed Paige abused her because Paige lied to her about me being a predator. Blair believing that this is her being abused and that she is the real victim proves two things. First of all, she has a massive victim complex. In her mind, she is always in the right, and everyone is just victimizing her. The second thing is that she treats the word abuse very, very lightly. I mean, already we've seen the allegation she's made of abuse fall apart under the smallest amount of scrutiny, but this is the clearest example yet of her using abuse to refer to anything she doesn't like. This is a slap in the face to actual abuse victims. After this incident, I didn't speak to Paige again until she DM'd me something very disturbing. Paige sent me a picture of Blair's face, something I know she wants private. I immediately told Paige to take it down, for her to never do it again, that she was fucked up for doing that, and that I disavowed it. While the DMs from that time are gone due to us deleting them later for her to send screenshots to Blair, here's me arguing with Paige a little over a week later where I mention what I did at the time, something she concedes to. I also told a friend at the time about it, further corroborating this taking place. I cut her off after this because this was something very disturbing to me and I didn't trust her. I only talked to Paige again because she told me Blair was suspicious that she was sending me information, and me making a fake expose document on her would be the only way to alleviate her suspicions. I was skeptical of this because, again, I didn't trust her and I didn't like having to act. However, I had only ever lied to stop Blair from knowing I knew she was gay-upping me. I never misled her on anything else. Also, I gave Paige one final chance as she seemed genuinely remorseful, instantly deleted the Blair face docs, and I had my guards up sky high while interacting with her. The fake document on Paige, which was supposed to be about Paige making false accusations about me, set off Blair's alarms.
If she releases this before my video, I might have to do another 3 weeks worth of editing or my response is entirely discredited. And if my video comes out before hers, within a few days she'll have a defense that will heavily stop the impact of what I'm doing. You fucking ruined everything because you wanted to clear your guilty conscience for a situation you got yourself into and roped others into. With all due respect, you are the most self-centered individual I have ever met.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
My response is entirely discredited. My response is entirely discredited.
The third line here is especially eyebrow-raising, as Blair's problems seem to be with either Paige telling me the allegations were false, in which case Blair would have wanted her to continue making false allegations, or with Paige telling me that Blair had been using her as a puppet. Either is concerning, but I'm happy Blair basically admits here her response is entirely discredited, as if this discredits the 7-hour video, that video was likely terrible to begin with. I cut off Paige for good on the 17th, after she admitting to me that she had still been sending screenshots of our conversations to Blair. It's not like I had anything to hide since I'd been very careful with her, but her displaying manipulative tendencies after I gave her one last chance was proof she had not changed. Paige also told me she had told Blair that she had been still sending screenshots to me too, leading to Blair apparently planning another never-to-be-released video on her. As I know Blair will be trying to equate our actions during this time period, here are a few key differences. 1. Blair encouraged Paige to start a fake relationship with me to violate my trust and send my personal thoughts and private conversations to Blair. Meanwhile, the only dishonesty I engaged in was making sure Blair didn't know I knew of her manipulation. 2. After Paige did something terrible to Blair, I immediately disavowed it, expressed disgust at her actions towards her, as well as expressed sympathy towards Blair, cut her off for a while, and only trepidatiously talked to her under very stringent conditions. Meanwhile, after Paige did something terrible to me, Blair expressed disappointment the false allegations weren't true, expressed no sympathy for me, claimed to be the real victim, and potentially attacked Paige over her ending her gaslighting of me. I would like to end the section here, but sadly there's even more to this story that makes it even worse. You see, Paige is an awful human being, something I discovered about a day before I blocked her, which was a major reason I did block her, which is something that has become more and more certain with the more evidence that piles up. Paige is also known by 2 other names, Darwin and Fenegu. Each has a long history that Paige has alluded to. Under the Fenegu alias, Paige was exposed about a year ago in a thread that includes screenshots of her doxing someone, which Paige herself admitted was real later in my DMs after she took advantage of me unblocking her for a few minutes while searching our DMs to attempt to talk to me again. As well as the doxing and transphobia, there are also unproven accusations of grooming, sexual harassment, sending of unsolicited nudes, as well as manipulation and face doxing, of which the latter 3 things happen to be things I wouldn't exactly put past her. Paige was so infamous under the Fenegu pseudonym that she was the literal dictionary definition of a dasher girl, someone who engages in lewd behaviour on Geometry Dash of all places. Does it stop there? No. Paige in June of this year doxed and harassed people on the Ibis Paint X server, somewhere Blair used to be active on. She also sent adults extremely explicit nude videos of herself while lying that she was an adult. I think it's pretty clear Paige is an absolutely insane person. This is why I didn't interact with her again. Blair seems to think Paige is an insane person too, as she knows that she's made up false allegations, knows about her past, has close friends that knew about Paige's insanity, and most damningly, told Paige that she was planning to make a video expose on her, something someone usually doesn't do if they think the person is innocent. What does this mean? Aside from it meaning Blair is currently dating someone nearly Vary-level psycho, which I did try to get her out of once I found out for her own safety, it means Blair tried to manipulate me by getting someone she knows is a psycho doxer crazy person to start a fake relationship with me. She intentionally tried to put me in danger by getting her insane psycho friend to manipulate me into a relationship. I can't understate how fucked up that is. Okay, I'm gonna add a bit here mid-editing because there are some very important updates surrounding the Paige situation. It turns out Paige had been catfishing Blair the whole time, repeatedly using pictures of porn stars to send nudes of herself that aren't actually herself. This in turn, since we know Blair has shown herself to Paige, means Paige sexually took advantage of Blair by sending her fake images in return for real nudes of Blair, as well as the obvious months-long sexual catfish. The section of the video I'm going to transition into next revolves around Blair's denial that she engaged in something sort of similar to what she attempted with Paige and me, but on a lesser scale. While I will break down her argument on its own merits, keep in the back of your mind that Blair attempted an extreme version of what she will deny only months after leaving the internet due to backlash. When she says she would do it all over again, she's being very, very literal.
I not only manipulated her, but I am also God of the New World.
Now, Blair admits to, in her words, using the fake relationship as a tool to cause mental anguish to me. However, at the same time, she denies that she maliciously orchestrated the relationship as I claimed she did. She is lying.
High-Girl and Infix claim that I planned the entire relationship based on the fact that I said I planned this whole thing and with no other proof and nothing confirming what this thing is.
This in particular makes me think she's being less than honest with the arguments, as I never say Blair planned the whole relationship. I explicitly say this in the original document. Blair was unaware the relationship was a facade until late September. After this, Blair started to use this fake relationship to manipulate and emotionally abuse me. What I do say is that once she found out, she took advantage of the situation she was now informed of and planned how the fake relationship would develop from then on, such as the timing of the relationship's end. Her saying she wanted to wreck things still meant the reveal, but obviously making that reveal extra painful is part of wrecking things, and something that she did do. Blair attempts to make multiple arguments relating to this point instead of just sticking to debunking what I said. She basically follows the narcissist's prayer. That didn't happen, and if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. She simultaneously downplays what happened, denies what I allege, and claims I deserved it anyway, as well as making weird side accusations such as, I'm trying to hide evidence that I was a toxic partner to Vary.
That's why any reference to her feeling discomforted by me or me being a toxic partner to Vary because of how obsessive I am needs to be eradicated.
What's a proof? That I didn't include in the doc, a screenshot of DMs where Blair just complains about me and makes up that I'll probably be a toxic partner with no proof. Maybe I'm just too autistic for this, but I don't think leaving out DMs of Blair complaining to Vary makes me some dishonest fraud. Leaving screenshots out is something Blair goes on and on and on about in this section, something which has no relevance to the claims and is just a way for her to attack my credibility. Literally at the bottom of the doc, I had a link to a video of me scrolling through all of our DMs in that conversation. You can't say I'm hiding or leaving out stuff. And yes, most people don't look through that video, but the only screenshots that actually need to be separately in the main document itself are the ones that are extremely important to the things I'm saying. I kept what was necessary and only what is necessary. A screenshot like this doesn't need the context of the DMs around it, because the DMs surrounding it don't add any context to it. It would just be congesting the document. Well, how come you included this screenshot, and this screenshot, but they're not chronologically directly after one another? Obviously because the screenshots in between were irrelevant. Duh. After all, I wasn't the one making a 7-hour video, I was trying to make a short document to get the facts across. This is the same reason I didn't go on for 50 paragraphs describing how I hurt Blair like she got outraged at me not doing. I literally explained how I hurt her in the document, and how it was bad and how guilty I felt, but Blair was mad it was only a few sentences long.
The amount of time I spend talking about what she went through rivals the length of the first document, and the amount of time talking about what I did in full is not only 6 times longer than her own recounting in the document, but is 87 times longer than her explanation of what she did to me.
Or that I referred to getting her nudes from Lucy as the February incident. I don't see a problem with shortening that, since I already explained what happened, and I would assume that people are smart enough to understand what I refer to. It's like nobody needs to say, when those 2 planes hit the World Trade Centers in 2001, when people can just say 9/11. This is an exposed document detailing how her and Vary hurt me, not a video essay on the history of me and Blair's relationship. I need to keep this short. It's not invalidating her trauma, and just making something longer doesn't necessarily make it better. Think of this like an angry defense of Pygel and short criticism. Also, to address another criticism Blare gives to the first document, that it was more focused on her than Vary, who was the worst one, isn't the reason kind of obvious? Vary doesn't have much of an online presence. They said they plan to leave the internet soon, the evidence against them is way more simple, and there's less evidence needed against them. On the other hand, Blare has a large online presence, I knew she would likely try to respond to the document, and there's more evidence against her, albeit more complex. There is simply not a need for Vary having as much of the document spent on them as Blare. The document's title having her ahead of Vary is also because people know who Blare is, but not who Vary is, and as I want people to read the document and Blare herself said nobody really knew who Vary is, having her name ahead is better to get people to be actually interested. I don't think Blare understands just how much I was attached to Vary either.
But no, that wasn't enough for you. This document ain't objective. It's personal. Why in the document about two people omitting the worst offender? Well, let's go back to when Vary was in call with Pi. According to Vary, Pi uttered, "I want to ruin Blare." Okay, so at the beginning of this video, we established that Pi has an unhealthy hyper-obsession with me, and now we're combining that hyper-obsession with a desire to take me down. Don't you think that might bleed into the cool document and skew the subject of the video? Why the fuck are you crying to Vary that you want to ruin me? Don't you think there's someone else in the call with you right now who deserves to be ruined?
I literally told them I could not be physically angry at her because I loved them so much and felt so dependent on them. Therefore, since Blare was the one who told me and was laughing in my face about the fake relationship while being smug and condescending, naturally I got most upset with her as I had nobody else to be upset at. Yes, I told Vary I wanted to ruin her, because at that moment I did. I was angry. It was literally like an hour after the reveal. Who wouldn't, and who cares?
You had the opportunity to obliterate a psychopathic abuser who has the capacity to harm others, but like with every other controversy you have ever covered, you misplaced your priorities and instead went after someone who did far, far less, giving people a warped view of the situation and letting the real abuser get off scot-free.
This is a very strange comment from Blare, claiming that because I also focused heavily on her in the document that I let Vary get away with it. Get away with it? That's simply not true. They're exiled from the community way more than Blare is. Basically, everyone sees them as the insane psychopath they are. In fact, apart from Draylin questionably letting them in their stream chat, and me reaching out a couple times earlier this year when I was extra depressed, the only person I know who has wanted to talk to Vary since the drama, up until the apology of course, is Blare herself, who apparently wanted to work on a project together. Now, I won't defend Cammy leaking DMs of Blair's mental breakdown that took place while Vary was abusing her, that's fucked up. But in regards to the "how dare Cammy interact with Vary again, who he admits abused someone" criticism of him, isn't that pretty hypocritical, Blair? Also, in an alternate universe where I did only focus on Vary in the document, would anything to do with Vary be different? Not that I can think of. So, the downplaying. The very strange thing Blare claims is that aside from the cutting thing later on, Vary's relationship with me was not abusive.
Where she states that the relationship had strayed away from its original aim of making her feel better. And no evidence is given to substantiate this. It can't be about blatant abuse. The only evidence she presents of Vary being blatantly abusive is from November 26th Eastern Standard Time, 2 months later. I think if the relationship were blatantly abusive at this point, she would have substantiated it to further condemn Vary, no? I think it's fair to cross out any blatant abuse Pine Girl endured, at least for now.
By the time of the screenshot conversations between Blare and Vary about me, it was clear that she wasn't keeping up the facade out of any concern for me. According to her own screenshots, the only reason they were in a relationship at this time was to facilitate her plan to hurt me.
This whole situation happened because they were being selfless. They lied to help us. They were only doing this because they know how it feels.
Every single interaction they had with me was deceitful for the purpose of stringing things along until I could be hurt. Abuse isn't always a singular incident. The entire relationship, especially once the purpose of them being in it was malicious, was abusive, by literally any definition you can find of emotional abuse. So it was abusive. But was Blare involved? The silver bullet of the document was her saying, "Look, this whole thing was planned by the both of us." And after I asked again to confirm, she said, "Of course." What's her defense of this? Apparently that she was referring to only the reveal itself. I find this strange since the words "the whole thing" refer to something larger, or whole, in contrast to part of the thing. It's like if you have a surprise party thrown for you, and someone says, "I planned this whole thing," but they're talking about planning literally just saying the word surprise. Like, the way you said it did not come across like that. You didn't try to clarify it further, and it's very obvious this is just a defense after the fact. I literally asked her again whether she did plan the whole thing, and she said yes. Also, I have no idea why Blare makes it out like I can either say I'm saying she orchestrated the relationship, or that she planned the reveal.
There is no reason why they should have assumed that the plan the whole thing comment was in reference to something with one piece of additional evidence with no explanation behind it, as opposed to the option with several pieces of evidence.
She did both of them. It's not an either-or situation, and it's disingenuous for her to make that argument. However, I take issue with the framing of her entire argument. The word I used, orchestration, is defined by dictionary.com as to arrange or manipulate, especially by means of clever or thorough planning or maneuvering. I never suggest she started the fake relationship, I do say she manipulated it to reach a desired conclusion. Therefore, if Blair manipulated the fake relationship even for the purposes of helping her reveal, that counts. Blair is acting like what she did is, in her words, doing one thing then fucking off, when in reality you can't count just the reveal itself. The lead up and planning that went into the reveal lasted for months, and the preparation affected the relationship itself. Case in point, Blair controlled how long the fake relationship lasted for.
My girl had a massive stressful workload on her, and even if I told her honestly and without malice, it would likely break her just as much, if not more. Because here, she not only has a stressful workload, she also has nothing to fall back upon, as this was before she stole $100 for a phone. So not only does this major revelation occur while she's smothered in finals, but she also has nothing to fall back. I just fucking said that. Revise your scripts better. So anything immediate is just out of the fucking question. That's gonna make things even worse. So imagine this. You have the ability to get your revenge on someone who irreversibly fucked you up. You really want to do it, but you have to wait an indefinite but short amount of time. So what you do? Well, you talk about it. You scratch that itch with how you're gonna do it. And here's the fatal mistake. The operation involved informing Pi that her partner was faking their relationship and hated her, and I would have to use these really cool screenshots of us scheming. But let's say I wanted to abort the revenge plan. Well, unless I want to trap Pi in a fake relationship with self-harm manipulation for God knows how long, I would have to tell her, and I would have to use those really cool screenshots of us scheming to prove it. She would know exactly what I was doing regardless. I just would insult her and would put on a fake info folly that she'd see right through. After waiting those 2 months, there was no aborting the plan.
She defends by saying that, well, she had to tell me the relationship was fake eventually, and she might as well tell me in the harmful way she did to get revenge. That doesn't mean anything. Regardless of the reason, Blair extended the time the fake relationship lasted, something she was so invested in due to her plans to traumatize me in the reveal. And Blair, don't give me that bullshit about you not telling me because I had finals, when according to Vari you wanted to keep the relationship going, and you only had to do the reveal because Vari got bored of it.
But yeah, like, everything changed in, like, October. Like, went from, like, a normal relationship to, like, just you and Blair fucking with Pi.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, but, like, how do they say this? For the most part, I was actually just, like, playing out along with Blair's ideas.
Okay, so would you say that it was, like, more Blair that was like wanting this, or was it like 50-50?
It was mostly Blair. Me, I was just existing in the background since I was, like, super busy at the time.
So you were
I was like, yeah.
So you were kind of like the bridge between Blair and Pi.
Yeah, so I was just like, yeah, just do whatever you want. I don't really care since I'm busy.
Why did you do it, and, like, what was the end goal?
I can't exactly tell you mine because I don't even know either.
Right.
But Blair, it's exactly what's been said, that some sort of revenge goal for the whole Lucy thing. Yeah, so from what I remember, Blair mostly just wanted, like, revenge on Pi, like, traumatize her back kind of thing. Me, I was just going along with it and being like, yep, I'm winning. So this is going according to plan.
So
on my end, at least.
I probably asked this question. Do you feel as if, like, Blair was sort of like the leader of this, like, kind of this, like, plan against Pi, and you were just, like, the accomplice that was just along for the ride?
That's really it. That's all that there is.
Okay. So,
like, Blair, the whole time, she was being so cringe about it. Like, she was going on, like, rants or something. I was like... And then, like, the stupid Spider-Man quote she did as well. I couldn't help but be like, yep, that's gonna backfire. Here's something I know. She was also using me as a form of revenge, because I asked her about it, and she was like, I did that first, but you were the perfect opportunity. So I was like, oh. And another thing was how the whole doc was saying that I heavily planned this out too, but it was literally just Blair and me being like, yeah, go for it, I don't care. Because she would say stuff like, if Pi does out, we're gonna destroy your rep, not mine. And I was like, I don't even have one, but okay.
If Vary hadn't got bored, I wonder how much longer Blair would drag this relationship on for. Now, this is already enough to say that yes, Blair did orchestrate me and Vary's relationship for the latter part of it, as honestly there wasn't much going on in the relationship, and the length it lasted was the primary factor. Not only that, but they also claimed that without Blair's intervention, the relationship would have been more genuine and ended more naturally.
Do you think that the relationship between you and Pi would have like broken off earlier without like Blair's intervention?
Actually, I started talking to Pi before Blair, so if anything, it would probably be more genuine right now.
You had like 3 options. You had cut off Pi, cut off Blair, or cut them both off, but you chose the fucking, like, the option that wasn't on the board, and that was to fucking stay in contact with them both.
Okay, here's the thing. If my morality is like stayed in line this entire time,
wait, what
I probably would have done it. I probably would have been like, hey, this is stressing me out too much, so I'm just gonna leave. But since October happened, I was like, you know, why not? I'll fuck around a little bit.
Okay.
And the little bit it was not meant to escalate to this far.
This ties into Vary saying in the screenshot earlier that they were only so harsh and relentless and abusive to me to fulfill Blair's feelings of revenge. Therefore, we can say confidently that Blair did help orchestrate the relationship for the latter few months. Now, also in regards to Vary's testimony, why should we believe them? Aren't they a massive liar? Well, I fail to see why Vary would lie when they had no intention of continuing to interact online and literally have no fucks about their reputation. They literally say they feel no guilt over encouraging me to self-harm. Multiple things not known to the public were also leaked by Vary here that turned out to be correct, meaning at least a large portion of the testimony is already confirmed to be true. I don't see any reason for them to lie. A time when Vary did have a reason to lie, however, is when they returned to talk to me and Blair before they left. Now, I'll get to this later, and I do fully believe the apology is genuine. However, I believe Vary is being overly self-flagellatory in how they talked about what went down in me and Blair's DMs. I do not believe Vary intentionally attempted to deceive, but rather that they wanted to place as much blame on themselves as possible due to the guilt from abusing me and Blair. Before Blair laughs this off, I want to remind her that she did the exact same thing after sexually harassing Droid. After initially denying she had a rape kink for Droid, Blair ended up conceding on the point because she was self-flagellating, something I know she doesn't agree with because she laughed off the notion that she wanted to rape her a few months later. If someone is feeling really guilty about something, they often wish to take all the blame they can. And honestly, Vary in the Cammy interview, a relentless sociopath, is someone I trust much more on issues she felt no care for. The other screenshots I bring up in the first doc are addressed by Blair, but through her attempted rebuttal of my arguments, she ends up strengthening them, such as her explaining that this LARPy line was a Spider-Man quote, something entirely irrelevant. What I pointed out was that the reason she picked this specific line to reference is because it works well to explain some of her motives for the decision she made, that attacking my heart is the way to hurt me, something she literally defends for several minutes in other sections of the video. What about her denying that she was acting like an insane crazy person by comparing herself to the Joker? And apparently studying someone's mind for a year, after we stopped being friends by the way, to find out their mental weaknesses to best traumatize them is regular teenage behavior? I'm not sure what school Blair went to, but I don't think this is the case. Before I get to a justification, one point she makes seems particularly hypocritical of Blair.
Like mentioning she outed me as a victim of something I personally find humiliating to be publicized, this coffee-drinking clown that dislikes me and is e-dating our dipshit white-haired co-writer that very blatantly hates me.
Blair criticizes that I told a few close friends about the February thing, particularly that a couple of them don't like her. I don't see how that's relevant. Sure, I did something bad to her, but as it is something that deeply affected my life, it's within my right to vent about it to a few trusted close friends who I knew wouldn't leak anything. It's not outing her. After all, what would be bad is if I leaked her sexual trauma. But I didn't do that. She did to someone else there.
And your partner for 5 months was a damn rape victim. No, really, Vary was raped before age 10. Whoops! That's probably the only acceptable content where you could say whoops when describing child rape.
Blair publicized for no reason the fact that Vary was sexually abused under the age of 10, proceeding to say whoops and laugh about it. This is abhorrent and disgusting. For someone who claims to care so much about sexual trauma, this is the most disrespectful I've ever seen someone talk about real child rape in a YouTube video. In fact, I'd consider leaking someone's private sexual trauma to the entire world for purely malicious means near equivalent to something like, I don't know, leaking someone's private sexual photos to someone for malicious reasons. Yes, I absolutely think Blair is on the same level as Lucy, the person who sexually abused her, in regards to specifically the situation where he sexually abused Blair, and Blair leaking Vary's sexual abuse as a child. To be clear, I'm not at all comparing them as people in their entirety, I'm comparing these specific instances. Do not try to twist this to be disingenuous. Telling the world about someone's child rape for malicious reasons and laughing about it is stepping over their boundaries in a violation of their consent. The consent they only gave her, and also me by the way, to know about their trauma. And this could very well be counted as a form of sexual abuse. This isn't just embarrassment or whatever, this is causing real trauma. Blair's defense of this is twofold. One is that according to Blair, they're a sociopath and they don't care about anything, so who cares? This is false. I knew very well, and I knew they definitely cared about some things, like their real-life best friend. And doesn't she think that maybe part of the reason for her issues is trauma such as what she publicized? And in fact, they felt physically sick after learning that she included it in the video. The second part of Blair's defense is that Vary said it was fine if Blair kept it in the video after Blair brought it up. Of course they said it was fine because they were being self-flagellating due to their guilt. As you can see with how Vary expressed their feelings to me, their true feelings weren't as nonchalant. Blair doesn't have the right to decide which rape victims deserve privacy. Talking about Blair thinking people deserve trauma, Blair strongly defends traumatizing me in a video. While I've seen many people compare me and Blair go, well, they're both freaks, I do think an important distinction is that I didn't dedicate hours in a video to a defense of me getting Blair's nudes from Lucy. I've never said anything other than it was completely wrong. I find it disturbing that after months of reflection, Blair will continue to make impassioned defenses of irreversibly traumatizing me for the sole purpose of hurting me. However, I'll play a game and evaluate her logic. But what are Blair's arguments? I'd play a regular clip, but it's extremely long and boring, and I'll play short clips of specific arguments later, so here's her argument in song form.
I'm the good guy here. Pi is the abuser, and I got abused. I've done nothing wrong. Bad? Yeah, right. How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? I'm just rapping my sanity. How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? How bad can I possibly be? Well, there's a principle of justice. That almost every culture knows. Called the Code of Hammurabi. And check it, this is how it goes. The citizen that gets attacked in the hut got maimed their iron bones. And the citizen that did it, well, the citizen that did it gets hurt in that's that same. Way. I'm just saying, how bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? I'm just repping the sanity. How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? How bad can I possibly be? There's a principle of therapy. But everybody knows the sound. It says the victim with the trauma. I'm coping any way they want. So I'm coping by being creepy, and I'm coping by harassing, and I'm coping by abusing Pi. Everyone's morals can fuck right off, and me? It's all about mine. I'm pathetic Pi. Let me hear you say trusting issues. Manipulation. Complain all you want, it's never ever gonna stop. Come on, how bad can I possibly be? How bad can I be? I'm just delivering some equity. How bad can I be? Just look at me milking sympathy. How bad can I be? Now once I said bad idea to Vary. How bad can I be? How bad can I possibly be? Let's see. The catharsis is satisfying. And the up is traumatizing. And Vary's still lying. And that asshole Pi is crying. Who cares if I keep lying? This is also gratifying. How bad? How bad can this possibly be? I
think the main problem with her line of thinking is that I didn't rape her. Like, I still feel really guilty over it and I don't want to downplay what I did at all, but again, I didn't sexually abuse her and I didn't rape her. And the way she talks about her revenge makes it sound like I did, which explains how, well, insane she gets in the section.
Here we are, old friend. The tables turned. Me, with all the power in the universe. And you, unaware of the dark truths I'm about to convey. It's funny, I never saw myself as that violent of a person. I knew in some situations I'd have to fight, but here I am, out to ruin this person's day, their month, their year. Am I the villain? How did I get here? I start to feel like a bad person, but then I remember that Pyro created this monster and dug her grave a long time ago. She wants to engage in behaviors she knows can traumatize and damage people. Well, don't be surprised whenever her victims find similar information that can traumatize and damage her, and is traumatized and damaged enough to show her a taste of her well-earned medicine. So let me fashion this message into a goddamn weapon that strikes her at her weakest point. Well, television, it's 7:37 p.m. You felt horrible these past 9 months, but hopefully you'll enjoy yourself. And hopefully you'll start to feel better, because there's no going back now.
She takes it to the point where she says she felt pleasure that I harmed myself.
While arguing against it, I mentioned that I felt the smallest amount of pleasure over the fact that she was doing this.
The way she consistently downplays what she did again and again, most specifically when she compares it to what I did, is telling.
Pie's situation was worse. I tried to seek adequate revenge on Pie. Pie wanted to violate my sexual consent.
In this clip in particular, note how she gives the most uncharitable description of what I did and the most charitable of hers. While both are technically true, so is Blair attempted to mentally scar me while I wanted to get off, but of course that's a terrible and biased way of describing things. Her intentions were also not to get adequate revenge, her intentions were to permanently scar me mentally. I can hardly think of a better example of this than her reasoning that since in May I was as happy as I was prior to February, I'd not suffered enough and needed to be mentally harmed.
As thoughtfully indicated on Pie's graph, by June the status quo had reset to January. Pie had haters, she always had haters, they just weren't overwhelming. And they aren't anymore. By commentary standards, she had been forgiven, and I think she had forgiven herself too, as coincidentally around this mental peak I was unblocked by her. And boom, everything went back to normal. Her status, her mental health, everything. In less than 4 months, everything had gone back to normal.
That's right. Since months after February I wasn't sad, clearly I needed to be hurt to become actively miserable again? That's not revenge, that's just malice.
And you keep showing up in my fucking life, when the only thing I want is to be fucking rid of you.
Blair at first expresses annoyance that I was in commentary, which is none of her business because she doesn't have the right to police what online spaces I'm in, but also criticizes me for leaving commentary?
She just can't fucking leave. So here's the scoop. A few weeks after the whole Boxing Day shit show, Pie Girl unprivated her account when she realized the coast was clear. Then she blocked everyone who could criticize her for doing so. She then returned under the identity of Shala, the very same faux identity she used to do pretty disgusting things. Then she migrated to trans and political spaces who don't know her rather deplorable history.
So staying in commentary is bad, and leaving for other communities is bad. Seems like she doesn't have a very consistent outlook on this. These sorts of arguments from Blair revolve around her belief that I had no consequences for my actions in February. For example, she waves away the whole situation of me getting slandered, harassed, and doxxed by defending the video that I've proven falsely accuses me of things like racism and pedophilia for malicious purposes by someone known for false accusations.
Pie Girl's extended family believe that Pie is a racist pedophile. She attributes this to Slender's claims. I disagree. Watch the video. At no point does Hahaye refer to you as a racist or a pedophile.
Do you accept at all that, there at least was an insinuation that she was a pedophile?
Yeah, but I think it's founded.
Blair sure does love false pedophile allegations. I'm sure she won't grandstand about that anytime soon. Wink wink. She also denies I had any reputational damage from what happened in February, which is an absolutely insane claim to make. Literally ask anyone in the community. My reputation is pretty much damaged forever. Her evidence that I lied when I said I have no chance at online respect again is her lack of reading comprehension.
What the fuck do you mean you have no chance at online respect? You literally admit to having it. Holy shit, she just lied again.
I said that most people didn't have much of a problem with me, not that I had respect from them. What I described was being tolerated, something I'm sure Blair can relate to given she's currently taking advantage of a similar situation. I'm sure there are many people who don't necessarily have an issue with me in the community, but there's no way in hell I'm getting respect from them ever again. This is also brought up later in a video where she references me saying I lost friends because of the drama, which is undeniably true, and again uses this to debunk that, ignoring that it has nothing to do with each other. And if she counts me not losing most of my friends as a reason I had no consequences, then going by the same logic nobody should care about Blair's sob story about losing some of her friends, since I know she didn't lose the majority of her friends, at least not because of the drama. But maybe all these points are entirely irrelevant anyways, because Blair also says that even if I did have bad things happen to me, it doesn't mean she shouldn't be able to make herself feel good by hurting me in revenge.
Is doing any bad thing to Pi after being victimized by her not allowed because she was outed as trans by someone who could hurt her more? If a person has had bad things happen to them in response to them being a terrible person, gaining your own personal catharsis by doing another bad thing to them is morally wrong because bad things have already happened. Is this what I'm hearing? Because this is dog shit.
So, what was the point of all that? Also, the concept of revenge, which Blair is woefully wrong about, is at its core about justice, which is what its fairness derives from. So yes, if someone has had full and fair consequences happen to them as a result of their actions, further personal revenge by someone hurt by them for the sole reason of catharsis is not justifiable. After all, we live in a society, and justice reigns supreme, not anarchist vengeance. Okay, but what about internal consequences? If I didn't change after February and all the self-reflection, then certainly I deserved some sort of retribution, right? Well, I did change, and there's pretty solid evidence. Blair points to a few things to say I didn't change. One is that I mocked her abuse, which I already debunked. One is that I tried to use the Mr. Girl interview to try to get back in the community, which is not the case. I didn't know anything about the interview before going on, and I literally argued with him in it. I don't see how she could make that case. Maybe he'll lie that I initiated sexual conversations with her? I don't know. But what I have is a very, very solid comparison of my actions to another more recent situation, where we can judge how I differ. Of course, I'm talking about when Paige sent me a picture of Blair's face completely unprompted. That was Paige breaking Blair's trust by leaking private photos of her to me, and if I hadn't changed, I wouldn't have done what I did, which was immediately tell her to delete it, cut her off, and disavow it. A lot of times when people say, well, if you want to be seen as change, it needs to be through actions, not words, well, it's a bit of a flawed statement because for a lot of things, change is displayed through a lack of negative action, something harder to exactly point to. Now, in my case, however, there is actual evidence of actions I've taken that show a change in mindset. A change in their behaviour that led to whatever negative actions occurred, together with genuine regret and remorse, are the most important things for taking responsibility in my opinion. While Blair says that I just said, I'm changed and came back, that isn't true. I apologised to Blair at the time, I felt awful, and genuinely felt remorseful. Blair painting me as someone who didn't feel any guilt or remorse due to it is as false can get. I dramatically changed the way I think about and treat my friends since then. I give them much more respect and treat them as real people in a way I regrettably didn't really do before. Blair goes on a long rant about how what I did to her ending up snowballing a mental state out of control. Of course, I feel really bad for her. She was my best friend for a year, and since I caused it in the first place, I feel a lot of sympathy for her. But actions need to be judged on the actions itself, rather than the uncontrollable personal reactions of those who suffer. For example, saying a mean thing to one person might elicit a shrug, while to someone else it could be the tipping point for a suicide. If you don't know how the person would react, it's fairest to judge it on the action itself. What I did was horrible and there's no excuses for it. However, the extent of a punishment should not be determined by a personal mental reaction to it. Breaking Blair's trust in the way that I did is inherently enough of a terrible thing to merit serious consequences, and that should not be different no matter how she decided to react to it. I can understand Blair's hatred towards me and I have no judgment for that. That's a cross I'll bear. However, causing pain on others will not solve her own pain. Every study and scientific article on the effects of revenge on trauma show that if anything, it makes the trauma worse. Bloodlust isn't a substitution for therapy. I'm not going to exactly diagnose Blair here, but from everything she just described, she might have post-traumatic embitterment disorder, as everything she has specifically described overqualified her for the diagnostic criteria. Here's a paragraph from the Wikipedia article to summarize it.
Post-traumatic embitterment disorder, or PTED, is defined as a pathological reaction to a negative life event which those affected experience as a grave insult, humiliation, betrayal, or injustice. Prevalent emotions of PTED are embitterment, anger, fury, and hatred, especially against the triggering stressor, often accompanied by fantasies of revenge. The disorder commences immediately and without time delay at the moment of the triggering event. If left untreated, the prognosis of PTED presents as rather unfavorable, with those who have the disorder trapped in a vicious circle of strong negative emotions constantly intensifying one another and eventually leading into a self-destructive downward spiral. People affected by PTED are more likely to put fantasies of revenge in action, making them a serious threat to the stressor.
While again, I'm not trying to diagnose Blair, what I'm trying to show is that revenge or lashing out your emotions helping deal with trauma has no scientific or medical basis. It's bunk. But perhaps Blair doesn't understand this, so I might have to explain it in a way that she can comprehend more easily. As a fellow fan of the show Star Trek Lower Decks, I would guess Blair would imagine herself to be suffering from a similar situation to the one Mariner finds herself in during Season 3, Episode 9, Trusted Sources. In this episode, Victoria, a journalist, visits the Cerritos to cover a program Captain Freeman hopes will gain her free easy press. However, Victoria's report ends up very critical of the Cerritos, leading Freeman and basically everyone on the ship, including Mariner's girlfriend Jennifer, to accuse Mariner of trash-talking the Cerritos. Mariner certainly didn't help her case by secretly doing an interview with Victoria, despite her mother telling her she can't, and by threatening to trash-talk how things had run on the ship, but she actually was the only one who spoke positively during their interview. Mariner was falsely accused and ends up being forcibly transferred to Starbase 80, and she also quits. Now, if you have a semblance of critical thinking, you might realise why this scenario doesn't apply to Blair. She wasn't falsely accused, so it's entirely different. A more comparable episode in my opinion would be Season 1, Episode 9, Crisis Point. In this episode, Mariner simulates fighting her mother to the death as a form of catharsis instead of her mandated therapy. The weirdly violent fantasies of revenge don't end up helping Mariner. In the end, she gets better by fighting herself, a reflection of fighting internal battles and your emotional crises instead of lashing out at others. I think Blair should perhaps learn from this episode that revenge won't help your mental state.
Who cares if revenge is pointless? It feels really good.
You have to deal with your own issues to get happier. Not all ways of processing trauma are valid. If you hurt others, even those who hurt you if it's overly extreme, that is bad. Just because I did something bad to Blair, it doesn't mean she can emotionally abuse me for a sick pleasure. Oh, abuse? Yes, what she did is absolutely abuse. Let's dive into this. Blair gives the definition of abuse that she uses, so I'll use hers.
You were not abused by me. Emotional abuse requires connection. It requires a power dynamic. It requires consistency. I don't see any of that.
Emotional abuse requires connection, a power dynamic, and consistency. The connection was either through using Vary to emotionally abuse me, who was my partner, or if you don't count that, Blair herself was my best friend for a year, who she knew I felt tremendous guilt over. The power dynamic was pretty clear. She had knowledge of my relationship that I didn't know, which she used to hurt me. She had power over me through knowledge, as well as her being able to influence Vary. The consistency is her helping maintain and orchestrate the fake relationship for months. There, according to Blare TV's own standards, she emotionally abused me.
One of them references a singular event where someone does something cruel to emotionally harm an individual and then just fucks off and never does it again. Psychological abuse is consistent and prolonged. If not, the low-ranking offenses like invalidation or condescension that occurred a few times in relationships would make almost every romantic relationship an abusive one.
Blair seems to mix up her arguments here. She tries to make the case that if emotional abuse happens once, it's not abusive, and then as an example says that if singular events were abusive, then low-ranking abuses like condescension would be abuse. Blair may have messed up with the script here because one half is about the consistency factor of abuse, and the other half is about the severity of it. Either way, a continuous gay op that went on for months is not doing one thing then fucking off. It occurred over a prolonged period of time. Even if you count the whole fake relationship and reveal as one thing, one very long stretch of continuous abuse is not the same as one singular event, which the sources Blair cites say. Also, it doesn't necessarily have to take place over a period of time, it could potentially be a singular incident if it passes a certain threshold. If you emotionally manipulate your wife into a suicidal mess one time, you can't say it's not abuse because it only happened once. Blair comparing what she did to being condescending is a pretty clear view of just how trivial she views what she did. For someone who claims to care about nuance, I find it quite lacking in this comparison. Another comparison she makes is if someone's wife cheats on them and the husband decides to go and beat up the guy she's sleeping with.
With its context included, my actions are abuse in the same way that beating up a dude that fucked your wife is abuse. If I fucked my best friend's wife and they cut ties with me and 9 months later they studied my schedule so they could beat me up as revenge, would that ex-friend be my abuser?
Now, that's called battery and assault, a form of physical abuse. This comparison in particular is ironic, given that Blair was the one making sexual comments about the person I was in a relationship with. The abuse and gaslighting Blair caused me was real. Her schizophrenic defenses come off as a desperate ploy to both escape responsibility and justify her deplorable actions. What she did was wrong. I've seen a lot of people say something to the tune of, well, you did something bad to her and she did something bad to you, so you're both terrible people. Now, I'm not going to judge anyone criticizing me for what I did, because it was terrible, but I do think that Blair continuously defending what she did months after the fact makes her case quite different to mine, where I apologized, took accountability, and never attempted to justify my actions. As I've said earlier, the two main parts of taking accountability, in my opinion, are admitting full guilt without excuses or justifications, and amending the behavior or mindset that caused the actions in the first place to ensure it doesn't happen again. I've done both, whether you like me or not. Blair, on the other hand, continues to see no problem with what she did, and her actions with the Paige situation prove she has not changed her behavior one bit. Blair has not taken responsibility, and this is only part of the terrible things she has done.
You should kill yourself now.
The final major allegation in the first document was that Blair did not stop my self-harm while she had the means to do so, something Blair denies, but is true, based on all evidence and facts including what she shows in her video. Her main defense is an argument with nobody that arises from her misreading the second document. I'm not joking.
Pi says that this form of abuse lasted for a couple months. Let's just say it transpired over exactly 1,500 hours, for the sake of convenience.
If you look at what I say in the paragraph, I don't say that the physical abuse lasted for 2 months. What I say is that for the 2 months before the reveal, Vari showed little to no affection for me, and that is part of why the whole self-harm situation happened. You see, that's the purpose of this comma, to indicate that there is a separation of clauses, something most people learn in primary school. The times that I'm talking about where Vari manipulated me into cutting myself were the exact instances of the screenshots I show. Blair's misunderstanding leads her into a few arguments, such as that she actually found out about the self-harm way after it started.
So out of the whole time I was baselessly accused of knowing about her abuse, in actuality I was only aware for 7 days, 9 hours and 25 minutes, or 177 hours and 25 minutes. Or 11.8% of the time she baselessly claimed I knew.
This relies on her misreading that the self-harm had been going on for 2 months, because in actuality, she found out less than 15 minutes after it happened. Blair confirms she found out about my self-harm only 15 minutes after I showed Vari, so this point from her ends up hurting her case if anything. Now, what I said in the original document was that Blair could have ended the self-harm at any time, but decided not to out of her dislike of me, being a bystander to physical abuse. Now, unlike someone like V, who also knew about the cuts but could only have, say, tried to argue with me, which honestly isn't a surefire way to succeed, Blair could end the abuse with a snap of her fingers. She could just tell me Vari is abusive and show screenshots of them being abusive, or even show how they lied to me about my relationship. If they did that, even I would have left them. Since Blair is the only non-Vari person who can put an end to the abuse because of the information she knows, she has a unique responsibility.
There actually exists a third and final way to clear me. At 2:48, Pi officially went through with it, meaning that in reality I only had a window of 4 hours and 46 minutes to make any change had I even known, or 0.3% of the allotted time, rounding up. And in those nearly 5 hours, even though for most of them I didn't understand the full extent of what was occurring, I spent most of my time making sure it didn't happen.
Perhaps the worst argument of all is that she couldn't do anything about the self-harm because it happened right after she found out. Like, I didn't expect her to stop the instance of self-harm that was literally in process when she found out. That was me showing the first time they manipulated me into self-harm to show when it started and therefore she knew about it. Of course it happened since then, which were the times she could have stopped it but chose not to.
Her actions have made it so she is not owed me jeopardizing my, at the time, very fragile mental health for her. And due to something Vari says in a second, I saw very little risk in waiting a few extra days when I'm less swamped. I think it's reasonable to shorten that 11.8% down to 0 seconds, as my inaction is justified by recently enduring verbal abuse and being in too fragile a state to concern myself with past abuse. Right.
Blair says, well, I don't owe her anything and my mental health was bad then and I was busy so I could wait, which is not an excuse at all. This isn't about owing, this is about your responsibility as a human being. Just like if you were a competent swimmer and you saw a drowning child, it's your responsibility to save them even if you don't necessarily owe them anything. Her mental health being bad and her being busy are also entirely irrelevant, given that she managed to take some time to plan her insane revenge plan, not to mention conversations about this very topic that she discusses later. It would have taken Blair literally 30 seconds to end the abuse, but she decided not to do that while she had the ability to. That was her decision, that's what matters. But Blair has a stopgap for this argument too because she brings up that she argued with Vari for an hour to try to convince them to not manipulate me into self-harm.
As soon as I find out, I spend 18 minutes telling Vari not to encourage it, and that if they do, I will drop them. They say that they won't, but they also won't stop her, and after some arguing we stop. It isn't until I learn that they are indeed encouraging it that the argument continues. For the next hour, I constantly attempt to push back on this far more aggressively. telling them to tell her to stop or postpone the date until after the reveal, talking about revenge and explaining that the reveal won't hurt her as much if they continue, and I know they want to hurt her. I argued this not so I could have the reveal hurt Pi more, but to appeal to Very's urge to witness, quote, raw human emotion, to convince them to harm them far, far less for more of an instant reward, because despite everything she's done to me outside of some stupid moral code, I don't want her to hurt herself in any physical way. I would never wish that upon her. The arguing stopped at 256, which brings us down to 11.5, marking it down. Why did it stop? Well, because Very said this.
She'll be happy, she's making me happy. But it's not something I said I'd do, I was just curious.
This right here changes everything. Well, yes, there are multiple ways in which to interpret this statement, and it is completely understandable to interpret this as I won't go too hard, or I won't do this a second time. It is equally understandable to interpret this as I probably won't do it.
Then Blair says after the debate she, gave up?
But notice right after they say this, I stop attempting to prevent them from doing it, and the topic is dropped.
Multiple things in her DMs are also very sussy, such as when Blair says Vary should tell me to cut in 2 weeks and she planned to cut me off in 1. No way, that could backfire with one of the people involved in the reveal being a known procrastinator. This screenshot of Blair saying she told people about my cuts because it was funny is also very fucked up and implies she doesn't have a real problem with it, because if I ever found out Blair cut herself, I wouldn't be going around telling people about it for the lols, because it's psychopathic behavior to do so. Anyway, the reason Blair stopped trying to get Vary to stop me from cutting myself, something Blair could have stopped literally immediately, is because of this message where Vary in no way says they'll stop. There are two parts of this. The first part is Vary saying that I cut themselves to make them happy, and the second part is her saying that she didn't say she would do it. But what is the it they refer to? What they are referring to here is the message they send here, where they say they want to make my whole wrist theirs, a dramatic escalation of the self-harm already occurring. So what Vary said was they never said that they'll dramatically escalate the self-harm. Okay, there's nothing here about stopping the cutting. That's why Blair makes a few more comments about it after those messages, proving that she didn't take this to mean the cutting will stop. She can't use the stupidity defense. Blair never thought Vary wouldn't make me cut again. She was bored after arguing for an hour and decided to not push it. Also, arguing for an hour with the abuser to ask them politely to stop abusing means nothing when she could have stopped the abuse in a second by just telling the abused person certain information guaranteed to end it. Why didn't she tell them? Because her priorities were hurting that person more. If she told me then information on Vary, it would have ruined her plan to traumatize me, so she made the conscious decision to let me keep getting abused and tell her friends about how funny it is or whatever. This is what I mean when I say in the document she let her hatred of me get in the way of stopping abuse, something she says I have no evidence of. There is no other explanation of why she didn't just do the one thing that would guarantee the abuse to stop. But Pi, you might say, Blair would never do something as horrific as let someone hurt themselves. That's what I thought until this too. But what if I told you Blair not only was a bystander to self-harm, but they actively encouraged someone else to do it?
You alright? Chris? I'm worried.
What's up?
Did you do it? Chris, you don't have to if you don't want to.
I'll do little cuts.
Okay.
Unless you really want blood.
I kinda do. And again, you enjoy this, right? And again, you enjoy this, and this is your idea, right?
My idea? I have a knife.
You gonna do it?
Are you positive?
Yeah.
Then why?
Because you mentioned like knife play stuff earlier, and I thought you wanted to do it just to continue with it.
I would never tell my partner to harm themselves.
Exactly.
I do that enough. And you want more.
I don't want you to.
So now you don't?
What's concerning about Blair in these DMs is that she was trying to get Chris to harm herself in a more extreme manner than she would have otherwise. Because of that, this means Blair would have been the cause of those more extreme cuts. Chris was the one who mentioned to Blair that she liked to cut herself, and Blair asked for Chris to escalate this. We can see later Chris says that she personally would never ask a partner to harm themselves, and Blair responds by gaslighting Chris. She doesn't want her to harm herself despite literally asking for it less than 10 minutes earlier. Blair also attempts to gaslight Chris when she says, "This is your idea, right?" despite it clearly not being the case from her reply. Blair thinks that Chris mentioning she was into knife play earlier means that asking Chris to cut herself worse for Blair's sexual pleasure is okay. Obviously, Blair isn't trying to manipulate Chris into self-harm or anything, so this is a very different situation than with Vary, but nevertheless, Blair tried to pressure a mentally ill minor into harming themselves. Say what you want about Chris, but she seems very hesitant about the whole thing, and Blair is the one pushing for it. Of course, if she ended up doing it, Chris consented, because if you're trying to get someone to cut themselves over the internet, you have to consent to actually do it unless you're being manipulated or something. But consent isn't the main issue here. If you know someone is self-harming, saying, you know, you should actually cut even deeper deeper until there's blood so that you can masturbate to the thought of them hurting themselves is not something justifiable at all. Now I understand why whenever someone replies to a Blare tweet with these screenshots, she deletes the tweet. At first I wasn't even going to mention this because Chris has made false allegations before and I wasn't sure whether this was fake, but Blare attempted to defend her actions to Jalen, which proved it was very much real. The only defense Blare really gives is, well, it's just like if you want your partner to hit you in bed, but that's extremely idiotic. If you're asking this stuff online, there's way less control, and since Chris is extremely mentally fucked up and suicidal, this is something that can get out of hand very, very fast. If Blare wants to beat the hurting vulnerable people for sexual gratification allegations, she can't keep creating more evidence like this. Jalen honestly spits fire in this argument. I'll just let her DMs give the final word of the matter.
From what I hear, this person is known for dating people with large age gaps and sending images of them self-harming. This is an extremely mentally unwell person, far more than you are. You obviously have some sort of agency if you can muster the energy to make a 6-hour video. That doesn't justify anything you did. Plenty of people are mentally ill and they don't get people to self-harm for sexual gratification.
What we've also found out through these DMs is that the only issue Blare had with the Vary cutting thing was that it was done in a manipulative way and it was under false pretenses. So if Vary was telling me to cut myself and they weren't faking the relationship or being a psychopath, then Blare would have given her hypothetical thumbs up. But that's interesting because in a video, Blare seemingly denies that it was manipulative, accusing me of being the one who started the whole cutting thing. Since this is an accusation of self-harm baiting, let's see her evidence because this is an extreme claim.
Why withhold the second part of the argument? Show a clear contrast of them neglecting you when you were being a genuinely sweet partner, and show them only validate you when you do something to your own detriment. Why is it so hard to just show the fucking screenshots?
One is that I say Vary neglected me as a partner, yet I don't show screenshots. So, what if it's a lie? Well, here's some screenshots now. This really isn't a big deal. Quick note, Vary also claims they and Blare had a serious pact which included Vary not speaking to me, which they broke, and allegedly, according to Vary, that Vary would commit suicide in March 2024. That's right, according to Vary, Blare made a pact with him which included that Vary should commit suicide, which if true, would mean Blare explicitly endorsed a teenager's suicide. Of course, Vary only claimed this, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I think this is important to point out as potentially an example of Blare encouraging self-harm.
The fact that Pi did it first without even telling Vary, and this is substantiated in the screenshots she presents for her case. This was very clearly Pi's own idea.
Nothing in the screenshots say this was my idea. Vary told me on call multiple times that they loved when people cut their name into them, which you know is true because you know that too. They also encouraged me to cut themselves. At this point in the relationship, Vary had been neglecting me, and since she had stopped giving me much affection, this caused me to do it. That is literal textbook manipulation. She came up with the idea, she set the circumstances that allowed it to happen, she manipulated me. And I know Vary says it was my idea later on, but 1, Vary is super forgetful, and even Blare mentions this in the video, and 2, they're not a very trustworthy person. It sure would look bad for Blare if she spread false claims about someone from a known liar without verifying them, right?
She claims that Vary showed her very little affection. They don't back that up. She claims that Vary was only lovey-dovey to her when she sent self-harm pictures. They don't back that up. She claims that self-harm pictures that weren't name carving were sent first. They don't back that up. She claims that it happened multiple times. They don't back that up. She claims that it happened over several months. They don't back that up. She claims that I knew the whole time. They don't back that up. She said that I knew for weeks. They don't back that up. She says I chose not to intervene. They don't back that up. She says that I was lying when I said I was partly trying to help her. They don't back that up. Section 6 is an actual at hers. How was this believed by everybody?
Basically, everything said here is a lie, perhaps going for the world record for most dumb statements in the shortest amount of time. I don't back up that she showed me a little affection apart from when I sent self-harm pictures, because even if I sent her some DMs of her acting happy when I sent her self-harm or of her acting indifferent towards me, someone could just say, well, maybe then the DMs you didn't show. What was I supposed to do? Leak literally all my DMs with Vary? I've got a lot of personal and private stuff in there just like you, Blare, and I know you wouldn't leak all of yours. It's very difficult to prove a lack of something because it requires showing everything, which I'm not gonna do. As for me not backing up sending self-harm pictures to Vary multiple times, it's because I already felt super uncomfortable with showing those messages, and there was literally no purpose in sending more. It would have made no difference. I didn't include it because whether Vary manipulated me into cutting again is entirely irrelevant to everything. I claimed Blare knew because why would Vary tell her days after it happened? I was proven right again because in the video, Blare confirmed she did know the whole time. I say Blare chose not to intervene because she didn't stop it from happening again, even though it was entirely within her power. And I say that Blare wasn't being honest when she said one of the reasons she wanted to tell me the relationship was fake was to stop me from self-harming, because it's as clear as day the real reason, which Blare goes into in deep detail. That's it. Blare accused me of self-harm baiting with no evidence. A real swatty move of her, for real. It's ironic a video supposedly about defending herself from false allegations has way more false allegations in it than allegations that she defends herself from. But overall, this whole section from Blare fell to tatters. Fact, Blare knew from the start about Vari manipulating me into self-harm. Fact, Blare was the only person who could have 100% guaranteed to stop the abuse. Fact, Blare could have immediately stopped it but decided not to. Fact, Blair's decision to not immediately stop the self-harm came from it interfering with a plan to hurt me. Fact, Blair has encouraged mentally ill minors to cut themselves before. The original document was perfect as is. I'm glad the community took it seriously because it deserved to have been, and I'm very thankful to Blair for dedicating a whole section of a video to providing evidence that backs up literally everything laid out in the original document. After all, the document was so good, Blair had to make up that I believe things I don't.
Sometime in January, she started spreading more false allegations about how actually it was my idea to make Pi carve Vari's name into herself, that I was intentionally behind it and intentionally did it to abuse her even further. And her evidence for such a serious claim? Well, Vari said it.
She purposefully leaves out that literally a few hours later, after I talked with Vari, I told Blue that Vari said they misworded. Blue told Blair this, but it's not in the video. It's left out for the singular purpose of spreading the misinformation that I was spreading misinformation. How ironic. Also, yes, that's right, Blair. I've got Blue on the payroll. I was waiting for Blair to fall into this trap, and of course she goes right ahead and does it. Also, since I've proved that all the accusations in the first document were true, that eliminates another abuse off the list, the one that was basically, you said stuff about me that wasn't true. 3 out of the 5 allegations about her from the documents have also been reaffirmed as proven so far. We've got 1 document to go.
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit. I'm horny as fuck, man. I'm a freak, man. Like,
Okay. To begin with this section, I absolutely have to take some L's, mostly the same L's I mentioned in my tweet longer back in December about the second document. The main thing is my usage of the term CP to refer to Blair asking for pornographic images of minors her age when that was completely the wrong word to use. I likely worded it in this way because I was less open to giving Blair credit on, well, anything. It was also especially hypocritical of me to use the term when people have used it against me in such a misleading and harmful way. I also withdraw the trans chaser accusation because my autistic brain didn't realize this was a joke, and now that I've been more immersed in the online trans community, I understand that trans for trans people are relatively common, and the way Blair talks in such a sexual way about trans people isn't as unusual as I thought. There are a lot of strange habits one can pick up in the online trans community after all. The assumptions I made towards the end of the Shaw section were also erroneous, although they were entirely made in good faith. For example, the part about Blair saving the Google Images nudes sent from the Shaw account relies upon Blair being busy playing GTA 5 during the conversation, therefore giving her no time to actually see them before she asked me to delete my messages. However, as I'm not a gamer, and Blair is, I didn't know that even if you're not actively playing a game, it still shows up as a game you're playing on your Discord profile. So it's a dumb technical oversight. There are also 3 quite important points I have to bring up in relation to this. First of all, Blair claims I intentionally lied about her saving CP because the CP wasn't actually CP. But even if she didn't save it, my point is that she believed it to be CP. Now that I look back on it, I don't actually have a moral problem with Blair hypothetically saving nudes of a minor. However, what she says here, but I really don't think morally, and definitely not legally, saving images of real child porn and saving images you clearly believe are child porn are any different. Maybe Blair's handler can show up to court and argue, Your Honor, the jury, while my client was under the impression the images were actual child porn when she saved them, it turned out to be not child porn a few weeks later. But I don't think it'll fly. Again though, I think it was a terrible argument to begin with, so it's not too important to me. Even if she did save nudes of another 17-year-old, I don't think it's a big deal. Second point, Blair never actually denies saving nudes of minors anywhere in the entire video. The furthest she goes to defending herself is saying she doesn't have a secret collection of child porn. Again, I wouldn't have a problem with this, but it is interesting how Blair only denies this specific claim. This does tie into another bad assumption I made, however, because even if Blair did save nudes of a minor once or twice, it doesn't mean she has the equivalent of the Library of Alexandria for nudes of minors. My final point is that this very bad point I made is quite similar to something Blair has done before. I'm not trying to do a whataboutism here, but if she's going to try to call this abusive in her response video, she would have to call herself abusive, which she would never do. You see, once Blair accused a fellow YouTuber of having a secret collection of illicit material saved in folders on their PC. Blair came to the conclusion from bad judgment, not knowing all the information and jumping to extreme conclusions by extrapolating assumptions on a mass scale, despite her conclusions ending up being completely wrong. Does this remind you of anything? On the 24th of November 2021, Blare TV accused YouTuber Bunk of having files on top of files of commentators' doxers. This was not true. Well, they did have a couple doxers in the folders, but it wasn't that bad with the full context. I don't want to get into it.
Blare TV is with us, joining us today. You want to say hi, Blair? Hello, if you don't know me, I'm the person who accused Bunk of doxing the entire commentary community.
Look, okay, it's water under the bridge, alright? That we don't talk about that anymore. We don't, it's not important right now.
Both me and Blair saw someone in the community who seemed a little sussy, and said/did some things that can be easily misinterpreted or misconstrued, especially when neither of us had the full context or the other person's side. Both of us worded it in pretty terrible ways that made it seem like the person had a folder of material that most people would be cancelled over, for if true. Then only once the person responded and gave more information, we realised that the assumptions we made turned out to be false. Blair apologised to Bunk, and this drama is old and rightfully no one cares about anymore, so I'm not trying to hit Blair for that. I'm sorry too, Blair, for making assumptions and unknowingly spreading misinformation. However, this was not out of malice, it was just another dumb self-made mess. Now that I've gone over the very real issues the second document had, which I conceded on the day I released it after I deleted it, let's move on to the more solid sections. The main two parts of the document deal with Blair being a sexual predator. However, again, I feel this was slightly too extreme language. What I should have called her is a serial sexual harasser and someone who takes advantage of vulnerable people for sex. The latter is what I originally thought was sexual predation, but being a sexual predation requires an abusive aspect, not simple manipulation or advantage taking, which is what I thought the criteria was at the time. Regarding the Grayson or Callie situation, I don't think I got this wrong.
Like, if you are unironically attempting to argue that Grayson cannot consent, first of all, you are incredibly stupid.
Despite what Blair claims, I never say that Callie could not consent. What I did say is that Blair took advantage of Callie's emotional immaturity and vulnerabilities for sexual purposes. Callie can consent. Well, technically he can't since he's 14, but I'd say yeah, he can with a 16-year-old, but that doesn't mean Blair didn't take advantage of him. After all, age gaps when it comes to teenagers are not solely about the age, but what about the maturity of the two individuals in question? A 13-year-old is way less mature than a 17-year-old, to the point where it's impossible for them to have a relationship together due to the 17-year-old having such a great superiority in understanding everything, to the point where it's on a dangerous playing field. With the Blair and Callie situation, the age gap is not the issue. As I say in the document, the issue is that when it's compounded with Callie's extreme lack of maturity, emotional, sexual, and just in general, Blair deciding to sext and get nudes from them is, well, creepy. Blair says, quote, he knows what he's doing in regard to relationships, end quote, and she makes them out to be someone who is fully mature enough to understand the ramifications of online sex. Blair attempts to downplay Callie's maturity, but through doing so actually backs up all my arguments in favour of them being immature.
Well, at least 2 of the other 3 were a result of Grayson intentionally rebounding with individuals far outside of his age range due to being upset that I blocked him for being a creepy, obsessive stalker who repeatedly said disgusting things about me on multiple hidden accounts, some with thousands of followers.
Well, 2 of the times Callie was groomed, they had relationships with people who were way older than them, so, grooming? It being because they were rebounding from her or whatever is relevant here. Grooming is grooming, and Blair's language is making it seem like Blair's either blaming Callie for getting groomed or saying they deserved it because they sexually harassed her. Even if both of them were true, it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's still grooming and very obvious signs of his vulnerability. Maybe Blair's just using this bad point to try to cope with the fact that she liked to sex adults while she was a minor, which is still grooming whether Blair liked it or not as well.
Paragraph 2 was a nice little combination of assuming what I was aware of, yet again, and completely mangling the timeline because Pygirl is a competent document writer. Don't you just love it when people spread blatant misinformation about people online? Everything else is of course a stretch, albeit a more competent stretch that they've used throughout various points of this video, although I've attempted to point out most of them. Still though, I consider Grayson a bit airheaded and a little immature, but nothing I haven't seen before from people I've interacted with. I didn't know they were at the bottom of the bell curve, and you can't prove that I did know.
Blair isn't stupid. She knew about Callie getting groomed. Everybody knew about the grooming. Blair stated herself she was quite close friends with Callie. Blair followed Callie's private account where they acted like a literal toddler. Blair even allegedly participated in Callie's diaper fetish. She's not going to get away with playing dumb here. Again, ask anyone who knew Callie at the time. They were immature to a level I've literally never seen before. They acted like a toddler.
Did Grayson ever mention to you how they just would obsessively tweet about me constantly despite me asking them to stop on numerous occasions? No, I guess Grayson just forgot. Did Grayson ever mention to you that they had entire accounts, some with thousands of followers, partially dedicated to posting about me behind my back? No, I guess Grayson just forgot. Did Grayson ever tell you how some of the tweets contain absolutely disgusting comments about me including about fat scat fetish? No, I guess Grayson just forgot.
This part is just a mess. Okay, Callie was sexually harassing Blair. I don't see how that's relevant. In fact, everything she says only adds to my point about them acting like a kid who doesn't understand sexual relationships. She literally showcases basically every example of Callie not understanding sexual boundaries and uses that to claim they understood sexual boundaries. What? I'm not defending Callie here at all. I think the sexual harassment of Blair is indefensible, but it doesn't make it any less weird to get nudes from them when she knows they're like the easiest person in the world to get nudes from due to their trauma and immaturity. Them being a psycho doesn't change that, unless you're of the mindset that it doesn't matter if they're a bad person or something, which is absolutely fucked logic.
But to speak the truth about Grayson, I am tired of him ghosting off the presumption that he's some helpless widow victim who needs our help and our support because he understands the relationships he engaged in, and he understands a good portion of the creepy, disgusting shit he does. Like, come on, you made a giant stink about how you shouldn't sexually engage with people with sexual vulnerabilities, and your partner for 5 months was a damn rape victim.
This point is entirely irrelevant, because I didn't say you shouldn't engage sexually with people who have sexual vulnerabilities. What I did say was that Callie had been groomed on multiple occasions, which Blair knew. Due to those grooming incidents being publicized, it was clearly very easy to get sexual interactions or images from them. In fact, it was even easier for Blair due to their infatuation with her. Callie legitimately acted like a child and was extremely mentally immature, which Blair did know. Callie's sexual traumas and vulnerabilities, which Blair very much was aware about, massively helped her gain the sexual interactions and content she desired. Even if Callie consented, which of course he did, Blair taking advantage of the vulnerabilities is fucked. I'm being specific with my criticism here. On the other hand, with Vary was asexual due to their traumas, something which I respected because I didn't sext or try to engage sexually with them, despite my attraction after they indicated it wasn't their thing. They did have sexual trauma due to their rape, but that sexual trauma had no relation to how I engaged with them, and very importantly, that sexual trauma didn't make it easier for me to get any sexual interactions I wanted out of them. I didn't attempt to take advantage of them. There's simply no comparison here. Blair tries this hypocrisy argument again.
Why'd you flirt with them in your ill-fated goodbye address? In fact, why did you flirt with them in general? After all, you were close, weren't you? In fact, I seem to recall at some point in the beginning of 2022, you asking them of lewd photos of their thighs. In fact, after you got obliterated, Grayson posted them, the screenshot.
Actually, no, I wasn't close with them. I barely knew Callie. I only knew of one grooming situation. The 2 pretty controversy times Blair mentions were in January 2022, I think, and I'd literally talked to him once. I was a bit hypersexual with them and I flirted a lot with people I didn't know much, which by the way I never criticized Blair for doing. Unlike Blair, at that time Callie didn't vent to me or act like a 5-year-old in my replies. I didn't actually know of the grooming stuff, apart from the remains time either. I saw a random person on my timeline who literally posted public thigh pictures, and I asked for some more in DMs. Again, these were things they publicly posted. It is cringe and gay and faggy, but not the same as what she did. Calling someone cute is not the same as asking someone for nudes. It's not even sexual. If you read the context of the tweet longer, I was saying how nice of a person they are, not flirting with them. By the logic of any time you say someone is cute, you're sexually flirting with them, Blair was sexual towards Ringo, Jalen towards JXE, and in fact sexual to JXE's cat. Blair's sipping on the Coca-Cola too hard right now, because comparing getting nudes from a repeat grooming victim that acts like a 5-year-old to saying is cute is, well, pretty insane. Not to mention doing stuff like taking what I said in the middle of my research to Callie before I even knew the ages is a serious point I made, instead of, something I was unsure of in the midst of collecting research, especially as I literally stated the exact opposite of that point in the actual final paragraph. At least I'm glad Blair apologized for these crazy messages because this behavior is not okay. Now, onto the Shola situation. Did Blair sexually harass my alt account? Yes, she did. The problem with the argument in this situation is that she fundamentally misunderstands the definition of sexual harassment.
You don't get to do that. The wording is so fucking manipulative, it is outright framed as if I am sexually victimizing her here, which is an absolutely terrible statement to make about someone you have not only sexually abused but have just been caught in the act of attempting to violate a second time. By the way, framing yourself as a victim in a situation where you're engaging in abuse is, you guessed it, an abuse tactic. If you truly felt so uncomfortable, there was just one word you could have said to stop all of this. No. But no, you chose to continue and you took screenshots immediately whilst it was occurring. So uncomfortable, guys. I'm gonna keep going along with this despite the fact that I'm so uncomfortable. Then I'm gonna condemn the person for going along with boundaries that I clearly set, because I was uncomfortable and they were weird.
What boundary set? Blair was the first person to initiate anything sexual, and it was asking for nudes, going from 0 to 100. The boundary she is talking about is boundaries after the sexual harassment had already taken place. I was startled, and yes, I realized once Blair sexually harassed my alt that I could use it for evidence. But I didn't say no. It doesn't actually matter if the person being sexually harassed doesn't respond or even likes it. The sexual harassment is about whether, when assessed objectively with regards to the boundaries between the two people, the conduct is likely to offend, humiliate, or intimidate. In other words, by knowing the boundaries between two people and witnessing the conduct in question, before even seeing what the reaction is, you're able to judge whether that is sexual harassment. For example, if you ask a stranger, "Hey bitch, you look sexy, wanna fuck?" that is sexual harassment, even if they say, "Yeah, take me right here and now." You're not able to predict what that person's reaction would be, so it's sexual harassment because any reasonable person would be able to see that, yeah, that's weird and creepy. After all, this makes sense. It's impossible to predict someone's reaction to anything, so what's acceptable is whatever is within the boundaries set before whatever is said. Did Blair sexually harass the Shola account, which at the time she viewed as a separate entity? Yes. In fact, did I sexually harass Blair by engaging, even if it was a panic move? Also yes, as that doesn't excuse it. I did use language tamer than I should have in the tweet longer, it was bad. However, Blair still sexually harassed, and despite the fact that I probably shouldn't have included it since it was my alt, or at least I should have disclosed that fact, my criticism of Blair sexually harassing in that instance still holds true. But of course, Blair disputes this whole premise. Despite what I've shown, Blair still claims I was the one initiating everything, and that justifies everything. Blair says, for example, that because it's normal in the trans community for trans girls to get sexual quickly, it's okay for her to just immediately jump to asking someone for nudes.
She talks about how newsfeeds is considered normal trans behavior online to draw a clear distinction between that and getting sexual/sending nudes. Hey dumbass, as said earlier, trans people fucking each other after 5 minutes is a common fucking concept in the community. Do you know how many green texts I can find? How many down atrocious individuals you can find on Twitter? This is normal trans communication.
It's normal to get sexual quickly, but that's very different from asking for nudes out of nowhere. This is a false equivalency. Blair also repeats the lie that I initiated the sexual conversations, but as I've shown, that's false.
Hey, Pie Girl, can you explain to me why there's a 40-minute gap between screenshots 2 and 3? Isn't the whole point that I did it randomly and abruptly? But why the random 40-minute gap between what's supposed to be the context and the actual offending action? It literally just discredits everything, because now there's no proof that it's random and unprompted. Why this massive unexplained gap here?
This argument makes no sense. So there was some light flirting about public pictures. I really don't think that's much different from the other screenshot I sent, especially since Blair had liked the original selfie and thigh picture on Twitter. I didn't have the Shola account post literally every screenshot, because the whole persona was that she was a dumbass Twitter trans girl like 90% of them, which would make it out of character. But Pi, I hear you say, isn't it odd that the screenshots just happen to miss the part where I send the pics of my thighs even if they were public and she compliments them? Well, if I'm trying to escape the truth or anything, it wouldn't make sense because literally right after the screenshot during the missing link time, I just call her cute and mention I played in Hypixel. Now, if I was intentionally trying to hide the slightly more flirtatious conversation that isn't relevant and can be seen here, why would I also skip over this? Assuming that my purpose, according to Blair, is to make her out to be the worst person possible and lie whenever to make her seem creepy, it would make her look even more creepy if instead of me keyboard smashing and sending cute emojis, I was just calling her validating and cute and talking about Hypixel. Furthermore, it would look less suspicious for me to take a more recent screenshot with a shorter time period in between than an older screenshot with a more suspicious time gap. Frankly, Blair's implication here makes no sense. The only logical explanation is that Shola, me, sent whatever screenshots I already had. But in fact, it goes deeper than that. I have proof. Here's a screenshot of me sending someone a screenshot of this conversation as I am shocked by it. Either way, this proves I just used the screenshots I already had, which were just whichever ones I happened to have taken. And by the way, I never accuse Blair of malice when it comes to any of this. It's not evil, it's just horniness at a manipulative and weird level. Blair denies that her joke flirting is not solely supposed to be the first step of any attempts at getting sexual.
With some people, it's just a goof, it's just for laughs. With others, it isn't. Sure, some have managed to cross the ledge, but there is a very obvious difference between the two, and the two can coexist without interlocking.
While this cannot be necessarily proven either way, I think it's pretty clear it's the case. I've spoken to many people who Blair has flirted or joke flirted with in the past, and seemingly in any case where the recipient of such comments is open to taking their friendship in a sexual direction, Blair tries to push it in a sexual direction. Again, I don't know everyone Blair's flirted with, so I can't do a Gallup poll, but at least from anecdotal evidence, this is the case. Blair will push things to whatever she can get away with. This by itself isn't even bad, it's a very common way of regular flirting, it's just weird that Blair did it to like 98% of the women, NBs, and trans men she knew. I never even necessarily criticized it in the document. The reason I included it too was just because I'd been hearing it from many people that was the case. I didn't interrogate anyone, others just mentioned it to me, it was a rumor. But to be fair, I probably shouldn't have included any mentions of rumors in the document no matter what. Let's take a look at the abuse list to see how Blair is actually saying I'm abusing her here. Well, I didn't spin consensual relationships as anything more extreme. In the Shola situation, I said Blair sexually harassed the Shola account, and I was right. In the Callie situation, I said Blair had been manipulative and took advantage of Callie. I was right there too. Blair isn't referring to me saying she had a CP collection or anything, which is a better criticism of the document, but I guess if she called that abusive, then Blair would also be Bunk's abuser, and can't let that happen. In regards to the second sentence, I never criticized Blair for hypersexuality. I don't have a problem with her being hypersexual, I myself likely fit into that category. What I criticized is her being desperate to have e-sex with almost everyone she knew who wasn't a cis guy, and sexually harassing and taking advantage of people. This is why I advocated for people to block her until she'd worked on that portion of her personality. I actually somewhat disagree with this statement now. I think that her behavior was unhealthy enough to the point where people shouldn't be contributing to it, but since I understand most of her friends are understandably women or other trans people, I think the call for all of them to block her was too far. She might not believe this, but I want her to have friends, I don't want her to feel lonely, and I want her to legitimately improve. However, maybe what she could do is put a warning sign on a friendship saying something like, "Feel free to be friends with me, but if I see an opening, I will try and have e-sex with you." But maybe what Blare means by me shaming her for her hypersexuality is this line here. Once again, Blare completely misreads this and does some cringe over-dramatic rant.
So, you want to compare me to Supersonic 1014? Dick move. Fuck you. But you want to compare me to Supersonic 1014 for being victimized by you and Lucy. Oh, you are just a special kind of cunt. First of all, she's absolutely referring to me being victimized by Lucy. The mention of Mr. Double S connects to a mention of hypocrisy, and the mention of hypocrisy is exclusively referenced right after I asked her not to publicize the fact that I was a victim, for what she attributes to optical reasons. And while it does include race and undeveloped well, this is primarily an extension of the reference to Lucy. Valley. What in the turkey tongue fuck is this inconceivable travesty that calls itself a piece of analytical writing designed to tear an individual down? Okay, so it's blindingly obvious that you are capable of grasping the difference between a consensual sexual relationship and absolute predation, framing confrontation as evidence proving a chaser or panic attack as a result of non-consensual implication of sexual encounter that's trying to hide the truth. Yeah, she's stupid fat, but to condemn me for asking you not to publicize the fact that you accuse me, it's just low. Pray tell me, pie girl. Pray fucking tell me what the moral issue is with wanting to keep my abuse story to remain private and not publicized by my abuser. I'm waiting. But to sit here and compare my relationship with Lucy, an individual who victimized me, to an individual who has committed absolutely disgusting and reprehensible predatory sex acts online, is nothing short of detestable. So pray tell me. Pray fucking tell me how the two are in any way comparable. That's what I fucking thought. To have the audacity to compare a sexual relationship I entered and was really victimized by to someone like him is just fucking sick. You are a disgusting, ugly bitch, both in appearance and actions. And I retract my statements from earlier.
Also, you can't even hear Blare half the time because she talks so quietly over loud music. I never compared Blare to Supersonic 1014, I say Blare compared herself to him. Well, not even that exactly. What I said was that after the Lucy doc, Blare came to me and asked me not to publicize that she was one of the people whose nudes I got from Lucy. That's why I say the Grayson screenshots make her look justifiably terrible, but I don't say the Lucy ones would because they wouldn't. The reason I remember her giving was that it would look optically bad for her, make it more difficult to make points against sexual degen such as Supersonic because she's done things that, as Blare has said in this video, will make much of the commentary community think she's a degen, even though she was 100% indisputably the victim in the Lucy instance. Honestly, I don't even remember what that Supersonic guy did. Blare would always talk to me about him. All I remember was that he groomed people and was a total weirdo, terrible guy. I'm not and never said what Blare did was just like the terrible things he did. Blare herself compared them both being sexual. As like it or not, as she says, sending nudes as a minor is seen as degenerate behavior in the commentary community, and she thought it might look bad. Yes, I'm not saying I think it might make her look bad, she did, at least from what I can remember. Since I don't have access to my old Discord account anymore, I can no longer access any of those DMs, but Blare, please feel free to show that DM I'm talking about, because it's funny that she's so eager to post screenshots of everything, but somehow for this one she omits the DM I'm talking about. Since she's quick to accuse me of trying to hide something every time I don't include literally all of my DMs in a short Google Doc, maybe she's hiding the fact that I'm telling the truth here. Who knows, maybe I misremembered or something, but it was something to that effect. If Blare's so angry about this, her anger should be redirected at the person who actually made the point. Herself. It's also a bit of a hypocritical point for Blare to make, given that she literally plans to compare me and Supersonic in her video series on him. So that's all of this debunked, right? Well, there's one more thing I object to in this phrase. Actually, two things. That her hypersexuality was caused by me, and that it's unharmful. Blare has been hypersexual for a while. Her claim it started in February 2022 is laughable. In fact, when we were sexting, I remember her mentioning her hypersexuality. It's not like this was mild either. Blare's friends that have known her for years unanimously agree that her hypersexuality began a long time ago, around 2020. The stories from these times, which I will get into, are on par with her insane behaviour post-February 2022, so her argument that I caused her hypersexuality is just a lie meant to blame me for her own issues. so it's a good excuse for her to pivot to attacking me and painting me as the sole cause of her own actions when it comes to her own sexual wrongdoings. It's almost as if she always planned to just make people feel bad for her to not have to take responsibility.
We can get out of this. Although I might have a worst case scenario 4 on my hands. 4. Pie Girl outs you. Contingency. Make sure nothing else gets out. Wallow like a bitch and make people feel bad for you can distract people.
Wow, I wonder what the other worst case scenarios are.
This is the end. Beautiful friend.
إن الدين عند الله الإسلام وما اختلف الذين
Extra noses pounces on you, ooh, you're so warm. Couldn't help but notice your bolts from across the floor. Noses your Nicky Wakey till day Matilda, hee hee.
Now that we know her hypersexuality isn't caused by the trauma I inflicted, let's take a look at whether her final assertion that her hypersexuality is unharmful is founded in fact. Now, by the way, in this section I'm not trying to morally grandstand or whatever. I know I've done fucked up stuff before that I mentioned, watch my last video for more on that. This is just me pointing out that in the abuse list where she says her hypersexuality is unharmful, she's lying. Blair's hypersexuality has caused her to be a creepy weirdo for years. The behaviour that continues to this day has been present in her since the beginning of time. She was also a frequently sexual harasser, coaxing people into sex and harassing people even after they say no.
Not outright harassing, but she was pretty much always constantly coaxing people to do sex stuff.
Even people who weren't interested?
Actually, I guess that's sexual harassment anyway, but she seemed to be trying to get consent when she was doing it, kinda in a backwards order now that I think about it again. Anyone who didn't cuss her off immediately.
Well, yeah, constantly harassing people to get consent is sexual harassment.
Then yeah.
So even if they said no, as long as they didn't make a fuss about it, she kept trying?
Yeah.
You had to really make a big deal out of it to get her to stop asking to e-fuck you. This is literal definitional sexual harassment, but it was years ago, so let's look at something more recent. Droid was a close friend of Blair's who you might recognize from her work she's done for Blair. In 2023, when she was sexting the insane person I mentioned earlier called Paige, Blair unpromptedly started talking very sexually about Droid, who by this point is straight and in a relationship, to Paige without Droid's consent.
If you're able to defend yourself on it, I doubt you'd need to talk to Sarah first.
It's not that. I just think it's more appropriate to talk to her.
How so? I thought you already talked to her, which resulted in her blocking you. All I'm asking is what it's about, after all.
I see you've met Paige. She's the girl I mentioned to you, still don't know how I feel, but I'm not as keen on ending it.
What is this about?
Hero, it is related.
I could keep asking the same question until you answer it, you know. The context for it already happened. There isn't a reason for you not to answer it.
Paige really likes me, but I noticed but a twang of jealousy at the fact that I'd had prior dealings with Sarah, and I thought playing around with that jealousy in a sexual situation would be fun. What you saw was essentially part of she's so much better than you and you're nothing bit. I chose my words based in accordance of what I presumed were acceptable boundaries based on our history of mutual sex jokes. I genuinely expected her to find them humorous. Evidently I fucked up pretty hard on that.
Blair admits herself that her actions were harmful. They were sexual harassment. Droid and Blair having interacted sexually before is irrelevant because her sexuality is different and she's in a relationship. She knows those boundaries have changed. The consistent pattern here is Blair does whatever she thinks she can get away with. That's why she used to push for sexting even if someone said no, as long as they didn't blow up at her. That's why with almost all her female, NB and trans guy friends, she's the most sexual with them she can get away with. That's why she does fucked up shit with Paige. That's why she feels entitled to break people's boundaries behind their back. That's why she just pushes and pushes for it, even if it's weird and creepy, as long as they don't actively call her out for it. Vary is asexual, but that didn't stop Blair from asking them to create an animation of them having sex the first time they ever called, suggesting she could record audio for it and Vary should do the same. They weren't even friends for that long before this. The relationship was not sexual at all, and Vary had never indicated any sexual interest. By the way, Vary never made the animation. Vary isn't sex repulsed, and generally they don't care about a lot of things, but that doesn't stop this from being sexual harassment. Blair knows Vary wouldn't cut her off for this or anything, so she felt entitled to be a weird creep.
I don't know, I just know she's horny as fuck. I was, in fact, a victim for this.
Blair mentioned, Pi mentioned in the first document about, Blair, like, sexually harassing you.
Yeah. It was wild, to say the least.
Well, would you call it, like,
it even happened on call. I cannot tell you how weird that was.
I don't know.
Like, I just feel like it just...
Go on, sorry.
We just be like chilling on a call, like a normal Minecraft call or whatever the hell, and then all of a sudden she'll go like, you know what I want to do to you? I'm like, no. And then she just goes on.
Fucking.
I'm like, we're supposed to play wholesome Minecraft.
I'm trying to play fucking Bed Wars over here. I ain't trying to fucking have a bed war with you, fucking bitch.
A similar story happened with the Pogfrog drama in 2021, where Blair felt entitled to make sexual comments about Pogfrog to someone else without Pogfrog knowing about it.
Dingo, do you personally believe that if two people continuously keep making jokes with one another and the person says never says to stop, do you think that
it wasn't continuous though, because I was ignoring
you never told me to. You never told
when
me.
You sent that to Sid, I hadn't talked to you in weeks.
And by the way, Blair,
the last
are we not
DM that you sent me, I never responded to.
And also, Blair, can you address the fact that you got on a call with Sid? You got on a call with Sid, and you basically. Okay, well, I don't know. You're just denying it. We can probably get Sid in here.
Oh shit! You're talking about the one in the bunk server, right? Where I made the.
So you said to Sid, I don't know anymore because Pogfrog isn't reciprocating. They aren't responding to my jokes anymore. So isn't that you?
Wait, were those DMs or were they in a call? You said earlier.
It was in a call.
It was in a call.
When was this? Just would like a refresher, please.
I don't know. This is just what Sid said.
Okay, probably around the time you were making sexual remarks.
Okay, really quick. I think it was before.
So
then
the
why
issue
would
is
you
that
say something about me to someone else if I obviously was like not? If I obviously was just ignoring you.
I gotta be completely honest with you, buddy. I didn't notice that you were ignoring me really at all. I mentioned that in a call on one occasion, but in actuality,
So you didn't notice it.
Whoa.
You didn't notice it, but you said it.
It's a rather difficult thing to. It's a rather difficult thing to recall.
It's kind of simple.
All of us recall it.
You just said it.
Blair is basically saying, well, it was a preconceived boundary set up by Pogfrog. Anybody would do the same thing I did. But we're looking at the context clues and all the evidence here. 1, Pogfrog isn't responding at all. They're not reciprocating anymore. And number 2, Blair even mentions this in a call and acknowledges it and says, well, I don't know if I'm cool with this person anymore because they're not responding. So this is pretty blatant contradiction.
Okay,
so
Didn't I make hold on a second. This could be a null point. Didn't I make a joke in your DMs like one day before the entire situation came out? And while you didn't respond, you made a joke about it on your pride, so I kind of took that as a sign that the jokes were still allowed.
Pogfrog was probably making fun of you.
You did.
Pogfrog was probably poking fun at you, Blair.
Were you making
for being a weirdo?
Were you making fun of
me?
Probably.
Sid says you said verbatim, I don't think Pogfrog's into it. She's not reciprocating. So you basically said right there that you did.
Where is the source for this? Is it in DMs or is it in a call?
This is Sid.
I'll concede that there was no logical indication that would have made that joke acceptable.
Seems like Blair didn't learn from this situation. Blair's defense was that it was within their friendship boundaries for Blair to make sexual jokes about them. However, Pogfrog had not been responding to any of them for a while, a typical social clue that she's not into it. And most damningly, even Blair noticed this, as she had said earlier that she didn't think Progfrog was into it, directly contradicting her original defense. Another example of Blair going as far as she can get away with, placing more emphasis on how she can interact with people sexually than how her friends actually feel about it. Being a serial sexual harasser is actually enough grounds to call someone a sexual predator, although again I probably wouldn't use a term like that even if it's technically correct, because of the embedded loaded language. Blair is hyper-focused on taking almost any relationship she can to its most sexually extreme, but of course since she's smart, in most cases, she doesn't go as far as to do something like flash a cock at people, because she knows being dumb about it will push people away and make it less likely for them to engage with her sexually. This isn't just a few instances, there is a pattern of behaviour for Blair. She pushes and pushes as far as she can get without thought as to the person on the receiving end. Blair will take advantage of people's sexual vulnerabilities for her own purposes. Again, all she's thinking about is what her own goals are. Blair, this is also part of why most of your romantic pursuits fail. You always just push and push as quickly as possible, you care too much about your own wants, and forget these people you're romantically interested in don't always want to move at the same speed. The purpose of me saying all this and dedicating a section to it is not to morally grandstand like I did in the original second document, as I stand by what I said about the second document not being the best. However, Blair says I abused her, claiming I did a bunch of stuff I didn't do, so I have to respond to it. Blair also said I lied in the document and that everything I said is slanderous when my conclusions were spot on. So after this, we can finally cross off the last abuse of Blair. I've officially never abused her, so guys, we did it. And in this list Blair created of things I accused her of, all of them are true except the last one, which Blair also basically did debunk about doxers. Blair is a loser, a creep and a weirdo, and she shows absolutely no sign of changing that anytime soon. Frankly, when she said she is working on her hypersexuality, I didn't believe her. Like, a lot of this behaviour is after she was almost done with the video, and I know of other occurrences of her being a total weirdo recently too. She's not gonna stop, or at least she's shown no signs of doing as such. Like, I doubt Blair will even be able to say with a straight face that after her 18th birthday, she didn't immediately attempt to sext every adult woman she knows who would have been open to it. Apart from a couple people, she would literally sext all her female friends if she had the chance to. Blair, you're not even trying to change anything. Just be honest. But another thing I would note is that if anything, this shows how more solid my moral fibre is compared to Blair's. In 2022, Blair found out I was in an abusive relationship, and she decided to take advantage of that fact to abuse me further because I had hurt her. In 2023, I found out Blair was in an abusive relationship, and I decided to try and help her and save her from it, despite her refusing to do the exact same me before, and her abusing me in the past. When Blair was in the position to stop abuse, she collaborated with the abuser to hurt the victim more. When I was in the position to stop abuse, I did everything I could to stop it, repeatedly doing whatever I could to save Blair. That's an important difference. And also, me trying to stop Blair from being taken advantage of sexually, instead of being complicit in it, shows growth and change more than perhaps anything else so far. The conclusion? Well, the first document me and Cammy made was basically perfect, the second document had flaws but was mostly correct, and Blair is a fucked up loser who gloats about traumatizing people and has no regret for her actions. Maybe she just doesn't take this seriously, who knows? After all, her conclusion was half spurging out over people who made tweets clowning on her.
And as for you, I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a jerk. Hey, I've only been here a few minutes, what's going on?
And half a Joker rant on top of Family Guy clips where she just makes herself look like an insane schizophrenic retard.
Jesus Christ, shut the fuck up! Nobody gives a shit! Okay, I'm out of here. You gotta keep talking like I'm no.
Sorry for you. And when everyone hates you for lying, when making serious allegations and attempting to abuse me again, instead of leaving like everyone wants you to do, no, you just block everyone.
Oh my god, would you just shut the fuck up! Nobody gives a shit! Did you say that? You're going on and on! This is bullshit!
Blare TV is not the victim here. All the consequences from the document she brought upon herself, all of her crying about having a bad time because of people disliking her, is solely her own fault. This entire video is just lying to try to both slander me for abuses that never happened, and trick people who will never end up watching the whole video that the allegations against her were debunked, which they weren't. If you look at Blair's Twitter timeline, you can still manage to spot the odd tweet lying about me and her involvement. Like this one, where the first point she makes is her saying that she had to do what she did because the only other option was to put on fake smiles. Yeah, the two genders, making the reveal as hurtful as possible while laughing in my face about it and acting like a maniac, or lovingly telling me it while consoling me and acting happy and giving me a kiss. Surely there isn't anything in between, like, say, informing me of my abusive relationship in a neutral yet concerned way like I did to her? Her second point is just defending her horrible actions. I find it funny she said she felt better after punching a problem. Well, right after she punched a problem, she was forced mostly offline, so perhaps getting offline is what actually made her feel better. And her third point is... The only thing she said she did wrong in the video was telling Callie to delete some tweets. She literally defends 99.99% of everything she's done, even the stuff that is obviously horrendous. She's no better at owning up to fuck-ups than Principal Skinner while his house is on fire. And she can get away with all this because most people just don't know anything about what happened, which is clear from the really dumb takes from the Spurg Alert stream, as well as, whatever this is.
What happened was Pie Girl accuses Blair of, like, trying to convince them that they're in a relationship, but it's really a fake relationship. But according to Blair, it's actually a real relationship.
Hold up. Sorry. So, between Blair and Pie Girl?
Yes.
That's the relationship? Okay.
And that at the start, the reason why things really went south with them was because Blair felt traumatized by Pie Girl because Pie Girl sent Blair's nudes, or Vari, one of them, another person that I don't even know about. I don't know who this Vari person is. I'm trying to find out who they are. Vari and Pie Girl were having a sexting conversation, and Vari was like, hey, you want to see Blair's nudes? And Pie Girl was like, yeah, let's see it. So according to Pie Girl, the relationship was fake. According to Blair, the relationship was real. And then there was like this revenge kind of thing that I'm trying to figure out.
I know a lot of people viewed both me and Blair as bad, and that's totally justified, but there is an important difference here. I took responsibility for my actions. I never defended getting people's nudes from Lucy. In fact, I argued against people who defended me. I have done horribly fucked up shit, and it weighs on my conscience for good reason. There's no excuse or justification for it. I've also clearly changed my behaviour since then. There's a consequence of taking responsibility for my actions, and I've apologised. On the other hand, Blair to this day lies about bad shit she's done, continuously justifies and defends every bad thing she hasn't denied, hasn't apologised to me for anything, and refuses to take responsibility for any of her actions. A few times in a video, Blair sarcastically says something along the lines of, well, of course, Blair is the bad guy and Pie can do nothing wrong. Which is ironic since I have admitted to bad stuff I've done on many occasions, meanwhile Blair hasn't admitted to doing anything wrong to me. It seems to me she's on a downward spiral mentally, and now she's lost it completely. If you want to still hate me for the February 2022 thing, that's absolutely fine, I don't blame you. But if you do, logically you have to hate Blair at least as much, because she hasn't even taken accountability for what she did. Blair downplayed the abusive stuff she did and lied about what she did. The simps who play defense for her, or the people who accept her because who cares, despite her not taking responsibility, are willfully allowing her to get away with all this. If anyone else did what she did, it would be game over, but Blair's callousness and pure will to manipulate and to lie lets her escape consequences.
Blair, you are not the victim in this situation. You are the abuser. I can't wait for your long-awaited plan to deny the truth, blame everyone but yourself, and act like a helpless little bitch everyone should pity. You dug your own grave, I don't feel sorry for you. Not anymore. You know, you come off as surprisingly self-aware in your birthday video, but it's a shame the warnings from October you were not heeded, as it seems, well, you can work the rest out yourself. This isn't the end, and you know it. It will be soon, and you only have yourself to blame. Your video started off with a quote by the English playwright William Congreve, but what you cited is incomplete. The full line from The Morning Bride goes, "Heaven has no rage, like love to hatred turned, nor hell of fury, like a woman scorned." The second part certainly applies to you, as you mentioned, but on the other hand, I can deeply relate to "Heaven has no rage, like love to hatred turned," in this war, as you call it. I would also add that the quote labels you as from hell and me from heaven, but I won't look that deep into it. But for now, I think it's time to switch off the Blare TV.
How's it going? Relay Peter Griffin here with a message for Blair. Heard you've been using Family Guy clips in your YouTube video. But you know what really grinds my gears? That you would dare to put Family Guy clips in such an unfunny video. I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? You're like the Meg of YouTube creators. You do not have my consent to use my likeness. And if you keep it up, I'm gonna tell Seth and he's gonna sue your ass.